I need to enable screen sharing.
Yep. Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Study Medicine and Dentistry information session brought to you by IDP Education. It's got a great program lined up for you today, starting with a quick overview of the admissions criteria to all the Australian universities currently accredited by the Singapore Medical Council by Farid Zainal from IDP. And then we'll have a second segment will be delivered by Mr. Ankesh Gerard from Professional Trainers Prep Zone Academy for information on the admissions test formats and tips on how to tackle those tests. And due to time constraints, they'll likely only be covering the ISET and UCAT, which are the two main admissions tests for undergrad, med and dent programs. Prep Zone will be reaching out to you after this session to organize your free diagnostic test. So please ensure you've left your contact details on our registration page. Now, unlike the tests like the SATs, medical admissions, ISET, and UCAT materials are not available for sale in public, so definitely pay attention to this one. Last but certainly not least, we have assembled a really amazing group of student leaders and recent graduates from a number of medical and dentistry programs overseas for a really great informal panel and audience Q&A at 1 p.m. Now, these are all Singaporean students who've gone before you, made it through the process. So I think hearing from them directly about their university experience, virtual and physical, is quite inspiring and valuable for all you younger students out there. They'll be answering some frequently asked questions about studying and applying to medicine and dentistry, as well as what their study abroad experience was like. So do come with any burning questions that you might have, okay? Now, before I go into the introductions and start this event, I'd just like to touch on some housekeeping matters. Okay, we're recording the session today and also broadcasting it live to our FB page. We're also having a Q&A at the end of the panel, so feel free to leave your questions on the chat function throughout the session and at that Q&A segment as well. Now, we will try to pose all the questions that we can get to the speakers and have all your questions answered, but if we do not get through all of them, please feel free to contact us on a direct message with your contact details and we'll get back to you. And we'll definitely leave our contact details at the end as well. Okay. Let me begin with a short introduction to IDP. So IDP is actually a global leader in international education services. Our success comes from connecting students with the right course in the right institution and the right country, by providing them with neutral, objective education advice directly from universities. IDP is co-owned and founded by universities, and since then we've been the official representatives of over 700 institutions now across 5 study destinations in Australia, New Zealand, UK, Canada, and Ireland. Now, we've been operating for 50 years now, creating a huge network of opportunity in over 100 offices in over 30 countries. IDP is also the proud co-owner of the Ielts, which is the world's most popular English language test and operator of 9 English language teaching campuses in Southeast Asia. At IDP, we are also at the forefront of technological innovation within the education industry. And with that, we are excited to also announce a new IDP Study Global App. Now, this free IDP Study Abroad app provides you with everything you need to prepare your overseas education journey. You'll be able to search for courses from over 650 institutions, track your university applications, and get advice from our counselors all through the app. So download it now and get started on your overseas education journey. Now, without further ado, I'll hand this time over to Mr. Farid Zainal, who'll be sharing more about the admissions criteria for medicine and dentistry programs in Australia. Over to you, Farid.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Cheryl. Okay, let me just share my screen. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so good morning, interested students and parents, everyone, and a belated Happy New Year to you. So it's been the 9th day of the new year, and I hope the new year has been well for you. All right, firstly, I'd like to thank you for taking time to attend this seminar. All right, the purpose of this seminar is actually to share information on how the Australian and New Zealand universities assess applicants for both their medicine and dentistry program. And this is both for their undergrad and graduate entry programs. But as I've discovered that the bulk of you guys today are actually school students who are looking at undergrad programs mostly. So we will focus more on the undergrad programs. And to start with as well, just a short introduction on myself. Okay, my name is Farid and I'm an education counselor with IDP for 5.5 years, and I've experienced assisting students on applying successfully to all the accredited SMC Australian and New Zealand institutions for both medicine and dentistry. Okay, so this is what we're going to cover today. So it's quite a fair bit. Okay, we'll start off with addressing the COVID situation. I'm sure this is the buzzword, and everyone is very well aware of the situation in the COVID situation in Australia and New Zealand, and how it's impacting the medicine and dentistry programs in both countries. And we'll move on to identifying the universities that are actually recognized in Singapore. So just take note that, of course, there's almost, I would say, half of the Australian universities do offer medicine, but just a handful of them are recognized. So do choose the correct universities to start with to apply to, and then definitely you'll be on the right path. And then, of course, we'll look closely at the different pathways offered to the programs. It's not just the direct entry, but also there are other options as well. Following on the different entry requirements, we will look at the different entry requirements, application assessment, and additional selection criteria. And then we will have we will put up the more common FAQs that were asked by parents and students in previous years. So I believe that, this will definitely will be in the back of your mind if as the presentation goes on. And we will wrap this up with a closer look at the application itself and a Q&A segment. So we will have quite a fair bit to cover. So without further ado, let's begin. Okay, before I actually start the presentation proper, I would like to take the opportunity to actually share an important caveat. Right? Okay, these information that is provided here will be as at of 8th of January this year. All right, mainly the reason being traditionally and historically, the universities will only update and confirm, right, any changes that are made for the following year's intake selection process. And this is usually done somewhere within the first half of the year. So for example, for the next year's intake of 2022, full confirmation of any changes and info for the selection process will be made known within the next few weeks, even right up to April, right? And of course, part of this, partly the reason is of course due to the ongoing pandemic, right? As we have imagined the changes made to last year's selection process due to the, I would say, sudden outbreak of COVID. But the universities, the good thing is that the universities would have smoothened the process better for this year due to last year's experience, right? A good example, of course, obviously would be having to change the face-to-face interviews to a Skype or Zoom ones due to the difficulty of traveling overseas after the outbreak. Some of the changes to look out for are changes of entry requirements. But just take note that this does not happen often. All right, especially of course interview dates are something definitely to look out for, as this will definitely vary from year to year, right? But they are usually kept within the same period. Subsequently, I will also be deep diving into the interview dates within the next few slides. But do note that these dates are for last year's, and as the 2021 dates have not been made known by the universities. All right, so I'll start the presentation proper by addressing the elephant in the room, all right? The largest for last year and hopefully not for this year, COVID-19. Right? Okay, for the benefit of those who have not been keeping abreast with the situation in Australia and New Zealand, both countries are actually have been very strict with the COVID control measures, if not the strictest. They have been strict up to the point of even banning non-Australians and New Zealanders in entering the countries. But you'll be glad to know that it is still business as usual for the universities. But how do they get around this travel ban? All right, simply they have actually moved classes and lessons online, making use of technology. All right, the universities have been making extensive use of Zoom, Skype, and other online applications to ensure that the learning experience mirrors the experience of studying on-site. Of course, the universities will be covering the more theoretically based modules first, differing the practical lab classes, the more face-to-face interaction till later when the travel ban is lifted. Unfortunately, on that note, there are also some programs that had to be deferred to the following year of 2022 due to the heavy emphasis of the practicums in the first year of the program. Just to give you an idea, the largely affected programs are the graduate entry, medicine and dentistry in Australia. Also affected are the ones in New Zealand due to the same reason. But the good news is things are definitely looking up for the 2022 intake, which I believe most of you will be looking to apply to. Okay, the reasons being the Australian and New Zealand governments are looking closely to reopening their borders anytime from middle of this year to early next year. So the timing is just perfect for the commencement of the new term in early 2022. The other reasons for brighter outlook is the systematic rollout of the vaccines in both countries. Both countries are looking to complete their vaccination of their population by the third quarter or end of this year. Other reasons also include stricter COVID control measures, as both countries are getting to understand this virus better. So, you know, as they tend to control this virus better, so the chances of the country opening up its borders is definitely much higher, right? So this is the current situation. Do refer to your assigned counselors with regards to updates on this situation. Okay, I'm sure I'm just following on what Cheryl have said. IDP assists on all 43 Australian universities, as mentioned earlier. In fact, as we are actually co-owned by the Australian universities themselves. And of course, we also assist on all 8 New Zealand universities. Of this lot of universities, as mentioned, the following universities reflected on these slides are the accredited ones in Singapore. Right, so you probably have seen some familiar ones. I have positioned these universities deliberately on this slide in such a way that the universities that you see on the left side of the screen, like the University of Adelaide, University of New South Wales, and Otago, offers undergrad programs. Whereas the ones in the middle, like the Usd of Western Australia, Monash, University of Queensland, and University of Auckland, offers both the undergrad and graduate entry medicine and dentistry. Last but not least, the Australian National University and the University of Melbourne offers only the graduate entry programs. Okay, I'm moving on to the different pathways towards studying medicine and dentistry. So I'd like to refer you to this diagram. Okay, so let me refer you to the first column. Okay, the first column depicts the direct entry to be a doctor. All right, it will be a 5 to 7 year course depending on which university you have chosen. The second column similarly will be a direct pathway to dentistry, will be a 5 to 7 years as well. The third column, okay, so this one, the third column will be an additional year of a foundation studies, or what we call a USD preparing course. This pathway would be for students, either unfortunately they're not able to make it to the direct entry, or even considering embarking on a medicine program as early as after completion of your year 10 or your GCE O-level or IGCSE exams, right? But do note that there is no guarantee to completing the foundation, right? I will explore this option further in my later slides. Okay, lastly, it's going to be a largely science bachelor degree, first for the 3 years, then progressing on to medicine and dentistry for their graduate entry for another 4 years, which makes it a total of 7 years. This will actually appeal to a certain group of students, which I will refer to later on in my my later slides as well. Okay. Okay. Any paths that you may have choose to embark on your journey to be a doctor or dentist, you will still need to complete a minimum of a year or two of housemanship. Okay, I'll move on to the assessment of medicine and the dentistry applications itself. I'll just break down roughly so that you can see in all the bigger picture, right? These is the 3 things that you need to look into essentially, all right? I will start off with the undergraduate part first. Okay, firstly, with regards to your qualifying scores, this refers to your year 12 results, like your GCE A-levels, your International Baccalaureate or IB, and also, of course, they'll take in your UK A-levels results, okay? Obviously, for this part, interested applicants will need to meet the entry requirements of the different programs before proceeding further. The USD also accepts almost other national exams, right? So do approach your assigned counselor for more information of this. With that, I would like to take a pause here and probably just like to let some of you who might not be aware, and for those who feel that they may not be able to meet the direct entry requirements to the medicine program, say especially for the Monash University and the University of New South Wales. All right, because in fact, these two is two of the most popular universities for medicine. You can actually look to attend the SATs or the Scholastic Aptitude Test, for as both these universities will accept your SAT results in place of your year 12 results. But candidates will still need to complete their A-levels or IB exams, all right? And Monash and UNSW SATs score requirements are at 1420 and 1370 respectively. So those who may not be confident in meeting their entry requirements, say, especially of course for the IB results who have already been out, and for the upcoming A-level results will be out within the next few months, all right? You may attempt it, right? Okay, the second component in this assessment exercise is your external admissions test, and usually this is in a form of assessing the candidate's aptitude. All right. Okay. For example, the 2 examples that is the external admissions test for your undergraduate is your ISET and your UCAT ANZ. Okay. The ISET, just to give you a brief overview, the ISET is to give indication of the cognitive abilities of students who have applied for entry into the universities. And basically this is a form of a 3-hour computer-based exam comprising of 100 multiple choice questions, right? They are specifically designed to assess each candidate's critical reasoning and quantitative reasoning skills. On the other hand, the UCAT is designed to be a test of aptitude and attitude, right? And in fact, not an academic achievement. All right, you will access a certain range of mental abilities and behavioral attributes identified as useful. All right, these mental abilities will include critical thinking as well as logical reasoning and inference. For the graduate entry, on the other hand, for the postgraduate or graduate entry, students can have a choice of attempting either the medical college admissions test or MCAT, or on the other hand, the Graduate Australian Medical School, right, or GAMSAT for short, right? We do get a lot of inquiries as to which test they should attempt. For this, it will be on an individual basis, so best to refer to your assigned counselor, right? Do note that these two tests, there's only about 2 to 3 sittings per year, and to ensure that there's ample time for registration and sufficient preparation for these tests, all right? Okay, and don't forget, of course, we have Ankesh from Prep Zone who will be joining us later to share more on sufficient preparation for these tests, right? Okay, last but not least, I'll move on to the last part of the interview stage. Of course, with the pandemic, face-to-face are no longer viable, and the USDs have moved them to a Skype or Zoom sessions. Yeah. Okay. So with that, okay, I'll probably touch on this very useful information, which obviously some students, especially who are attempting the GCA levels, how are these GCA levels results being computed? Okay, so what happens is this. I believe obviously the A-level students will be aware that you would have attempted a number of H2 subjects and H1 subjects. Okay, so for every grade allocated on your H2 level, A grade will give you 5, B 4, and so on. Okay, similarly for the H1 subjects, A will give you 2.5, B 2, and so on. Right? So if you just, of course, simply notice that it's just half of the H2 subjects. And how the different universities compute them is largely some of them will take in your best 3 H2s. All right. Some of them will take your best 3 H2s and a H1, but it has to be a content-based H1 subject, which means this does not include your mother tongue, your GP, or your project work, right? Other forms of computation will include all your H2, if you've done as much as 4 H2 subjects, and your best 3 H1, right? And of course, last but not least, including your 4th H2, or even some of your candidates would have have attempted a H3 subject, right? So like popular examples of USD using such computation for as mentioned, the University of New South Wales, they'll take in everything that you have attempted. 3 H2s, 3 H1s, any additional H2, H3 as well. But on hindsight, this of course means that the entry requirement is much higher. Sorry. All right. And then on the other hand, for the University of Queensland and University of Western Australia, they will take in your 3 H2s and 1 H1. There is also a English proficiency requirement. All right. Largely, there will be a minimum C grade requirement for your GP, and it will be a B grade for competitive programs, right? Okay, with that, I will move on to the each individual universities and all its little details and how the applications are being assessed. All right, we'll start off with Monash University first. And I would like to take some time on this university to go through, as their interview process is a little different from the rest. So as of course, if you can see from the slide, okay, yeah, just a little known fact, they are 5-year program. And in fact, they are the shortest direct entry medicine program in Australia, which spells out that they are popular, right? But on the other hand, of course, more competitive. Okay, its cutoff points is 15 for GCA level. So simply put, as if you notice the next column, which they only take in 3 H2s, simply means that you need to hit 3 straight A's. All right. And for IB, it will be a 39 point. But as mentioned earlier, yes, you can fully explore the SAT, the SATs test attempt, all right? Because as mentioned, as long as you have completed your A levels and attempted successfully with a minimum score of 1420 for your SATs, Monash will actually will assess your application, right? And then moving on, right? There's they have the prerequisites for A levels of chemistry minimum B grade, right? And English a B grade. Okay, and the next column is where I would like to spend some time on this. Okay, if you notice that it's quite elaborate with all the little details and information that's, but I'll just break it down for you. So simply pre-COVID, just to give you an idea, pre-COVID, Monash does, they run their interviews across certain countries. All right, so they usually start off with Malaysia and Singapore first as their first interview round. All right, and then they'll move on to say Canada, right, and then Australia, and then for last interview round in KL, Malaysia. All right, but with the COVID-19, of course, in mind, they are still sticking to this in the sense that they will be interviewing students from their native countries or based in that countries first. So as you can see from this, it will be actually a good advantage for the Singaporeans to actually have their ISET results or in fact be interviewed by the Singapore interview round. Okay, reason being, okay, so what happens is that after each interview round, Monash will be issuing a number of offers out based on the interview, of course, which has been done, and the ISET result, which will have been submitted before the interview places have been given out. All right. So what happens is that the advantage is that with Singapore and Malaysia being the first interview round, the offers will be issued out first. So less than because as the interview process goes further into the year, less and less places will be available because more and more successful applicants will be accepting it. So thus, this will lead to the last interview round in Malaysia, meaning that there's a possibility that could be just left a number of places. Okay, just leading on for international places, they have a number of, say, 70 international places. So if equally weighted across the 5 interview rounds, they probably be giving out somewhere between 10 to 20 places. But then, I mean, if they do have strong candidates in the earlier interview rounds, chances are the number of places left for the last interview round will be very small, right? So it will be an advantage to Singapore candidates to have your interview done by the Singapore interview round, all right? Yeah, so, and then as mentioned, 70 international places for Monash undergrad every year, all right? And then they will take in your ISET test result as part of the computation. Okay, moving on. Okay, we will have the University of Adelaide, all right? So University of Adelaide, 6-year program. Okay, they have a cutoff of 12 points. 12 points just simply, okay, so I would say that they are the university with the lowest entry level, meaning that as long as candidates achieve 3 Bs, right? If you notice in the next column, they only take in your 3 H2s. So minimally, a 3 Bs will entitle the applicant to apply successfully. Okay, so there's a main difference here for Adelaide in the sense that they attempt, instead of the ISET, yeah, it will be the UCAT ANZ instead. All right. So do note that, in fact, University of Adelaide is the only university that does the UCAT ANZ. And the other thing, of course, to take note that is the relatively early application deadline of 30th June. All right, so do ensure that, although I did mention that dates do change, but over the last few years, they have stick to 30th June every year for their application deadline. All right. And moving on to the next university, of the University of New South Wales, or UNSW for short, similarly a 6-year program. All right. Okay, similarly, this one, they'll take in the ISET in place of your year 12 results. So as mentioned, if IB or your A-level results do not meet their requirement of, as mentioned, 22 points, yes, you can attempt the SATs to see if you can apply to the program. All right. So as mentioned, the 22 points, the relatively high entry level is because they'll take in everything that you have done, right? Your 3 H2s, your 3 H1, any 4th H2, or even a H3. Generally, I've noticed that candidates who have attempted 4 H2s do stand a better chance of getting to UNSW. All right. Okay, so similar, okay, yeah, for this one, I will deep dive further later on, but what they do is a rolling offers. All right, it's a little different from the other universities. I will explain further about the rolling offers later on. Okay, and with regards to their interview dates, do check in with your counselors closely for this, because as with the pandemic, UNSW has been adding on more interview rounds due to the Zoom and Skype nature, right? Okay, with that also similarly, they'll take in the ISET test result as well, all right? Just to add on one more little piece of information which I've left out for University of Adelaide, right? They are also the only Australian university that take in Polytechnic students or Polytechnic graduates, right? As long as you have done a science-based diploma with a minimum GPA of 3.0, yes, you can look to apply to the University of Adelaide's medicine program. Okay, moving along. All right, so there will be a few more universities. All right, the next university we'll be looking at is the University of Western Australia. Okay, so similarly for this, it's a 6-year program. Just a little note that they are true train kind of program, meaning that it's actually a mix of, it comprises of the first 3 years of attempting a Bachelor of Biomedical Science, and then moving on to the second year of the MD program, right? Just to give you an idea, the MD or the Doctor of Medicine postgrad medicine program is generally 4 years in Australia. But by going through this true train program, they'll skip the first year of the MD and move on to complete the last 3 years, thus giving it a 6-year study duration, right? Cutoff points for this is 14, and they'll take in your 3 H2s and 1 content-based H1. In fact, actually, University of Western Australia has the earliest application deadline, and which falls on 31st of May every year. So if you are interested in the University of Western Australia, do put in your applications early and obviously meet the deadline itself. All right. Similarly, they do interviews through Zoom or Skype, and 20 places, international places, are offered every year. And similarly, you take in the ISET test results. Moving on to the University of Sydney. All right. Okay, the University of Sydney, similarly, a true train program comprising of the 3+4, meaning that they'll do the 3-year. For this one, it's a little different. In fact, they allow the student to actually attend any form of bachelor degree and then moving on to do the full 4 years MD program at the end, right? The application deadline for this falls on the 31st of October, usually every year, right? And then, yes, interviews are done through Skype, right? Yes, this program is actually open to NS boys who can opt for a deferment if they do get an offer for this program, all right? Okay, last but not least, on the direct entry for undergrad would be the University of Queensland. All right, before I proceed any further, I just need to share with you this Queensland is a little different from the rest. Okay, so how it works is that, okay, this program is actually only open to fresh school leavers, right, who have completed and received their high school qualifications the year preceding their commencement of program. All right, so just to give a context in the Singapore context, like especially for your IB and your A levels, where results are only made known in the early part of the following year, unfortunately, these results will not be out in time for them to qualify for the University of Queensland. All right, so what we can think of is the target market that they are looking at is those IB students who are completing their exams in May. All right, so having completed your exams, you're getting your final IB results in, say, July, you can use your IB results in time for you to apply for the University of Queensland's medicine program, right? So do take note of this with regards to the Queensland medicine. Okay, with that, I'll just give a short brief on the graduate entry, because I understand as mentioned, largely the audience here is the year 12 school leavers. But say, okay, so the ones that offer your graduate entry, University of Melbourne, the University of Sydney on these slides. So as mentioned, largely is a 4-year program. You will attempt and complete your bachelor degree, and then with certain criteria score requires. So for example, like the University of Melbourne requires a GPA of 5 out of 7. And the University of Sydney is looking for minimum credit average. Similarly, a GPA of 5. And for Singapore University, it will be a 3.3 out of 5, or a lower honors, second lower honors for UK universities. But do take note that this is just the benchmark, right? It will just allow applicants to apply, but it will be on a competitive basis, meaning that there will be other applicants, for example, which may have stronger results, and they may be selected as a result of this, all right? I obviously do take note of the application deadlines, and as mentioned, attend the GAMSAT or MCAT as part of the external admissions test. These are more examples of Australian universities that offer the graduate entry, right? You have your University of Queensland, the University of Western Australia, and the Australian National University, right? So similarly, do take note of their entry requirements, application deadlines. They all work in different ways. Interview largely required. And of course, similarly, the GAMSAT or MCAT. Last but not least, of course, we have Monash University, right? So they do offer the 4-year Doctor of Medicine. They do require a degree with significant biomedical science content and a GPA of minimally 6 out of 7. Yes, all right. So yeah, deadline usually falls somewhere in the middle of the year, and they do a situational judgment test, right, in place of the GAMSAT or MCAT. Yes, there are one university that do not take in the GAMSAT or MCAT results. Okay, with that, I'll move on to their neighboring country of New Zealand. All right, to start with, the New Zealand medicine programs are a little, being a different country, they work differently from Australia. So just to start with, if you notice their duration, we added a 1+5. All right, meaning that simply universities, students are unfortunately not on the medicine program proper in the first year. All right, which means that in the first year, they have to do something like a Bachelor of Health Science or a Bachelor of Biomedical Science. The selection to the medicine program starts properly in the second year itself. So this is based on the first year results, interviews, and the UCAT ANZ, depending on which university that you're applying to. All right, so unfortunately, with this kind of format, it's proved not too popular with the local crowd, because of course you like to be on the medicine program from the first year onwards. But this will actually appeal to students who are still finding out if medicine is their cup of tea, because alternate entries include your allied health, pharmacy, biomedical science, or science. So even if going through the first year of biomedical science and finding or health science and finding out that if something else actually you find the calling of some other programs, then this New Zealand program would actually do well for you. All right. Similarly, for the postgrad or direct entry, only the University of Auckland is recognized. Right. It's a 5-year program, 1 year more than the Australian ones. Right. But similarly, they don't take in the UCAT or MCAT GAMSAT. So it will just simply be the entry scores and your interview. Okay, I'll move on to dentistry right now. Okay, for dentistry, I would, as compared to the medicine program, there are fewer universities that are recognized, all right? But their format is quite similar to the medicine one. I'll start off with the University of Adelaide, right? It's a 5-year program. In fact, if you notice, entry requirements are similar to the medicine one as well. Okay, then and also, of course, attempting the UCAT ANZ and the interview. And then followed by the University of Queensland that does a 5-year Bachelor of Dental Science program, right? With a cutoff of 17 points from a prerequisite of 3 H2s and 1 H1 subjects, right? A 42-pointer for your IB scores, right? And then just take note that they don't do interviews. And yeah, just obviously take note of the application deadlines. Right. Moving on, the third Australian university is the Usd of Western Australia. Okay, similarly to the medicine one, they do the 3+3, right? 3 years of biomedical science, followed by the Doctor of Dental Medicine, right? So similarly, you'll skip the through this true train program, you'll skip the first year and move on to the second year and completing it all in all in 6 years. Okay, for the next slide, it would be the graduate entry, right? So as mentioned, I will just touch briefly. You will have your University of Sydney, Melbourne, and Western Australia for your graduate entry. All right. Similarly to the medicine one, your bachelor degrees, competitive scores, and your GAMSAT or MCAT, right? And then of course, followed by interviews. Okay, for the New Zealand ones, with regards to dentistry, you have, it's only just the University of Otago, right, that offers this at both levels, right? Similarly to the medicine one, you will do the first year of Bachelor of Health Sciences, but it's relatively short. You'll move on to do 4 years, followed by 4 years of the actual dentistry program, right? So similarly, you will not embark on the actual dentistry program on the first year. You'll go through the Bachelor of Health Sciences based on your bachelor performance. And for Otago will be the UCAT ANZ that they will attempt. And then you will be assessed and then ranked, and ideally you'll get into the dentistry program from the second year onwards. Similarly, there are other alternatives like your medicine, allied health, pharmacy, and science. So similarly, these will appeal to students who may not actually know what they want to do yet, and they would like to use the first year to feel their way through. And then ideally, after the first year program, they were to choose which science-based program, say allied health or even your dentistry, to proceed on further. Okay, I've gone through all the direct entry programs offered by both Australia and New Zealand. Okay, right now we will look into exploring the alternative options of studying medicine and dentistry. All right, I'll start off with a foundation year, which you remember was the third column. All right, the foundation year is essentially a preparation program which allows articulation to medicine. All right, but do note there is a degree of risk. The progression requirements still need to be met, all right? And not only that, it is competitively ranked, all right? But this proved to be popular with O-level students and the JC1 students who halfway, they find that, the GCA levels is not quite their cup of tea, all right? And the study duration usually consists of 2 or 3 terms, right? So it ranges anything from as short as 4 months right up to 1.5 years, right? Some relevant or popular foundation programs which can articulate to the medicine are Monash College itself, obviously leading up to Monash University, UNSW Global, leading up to UNSW itself, and the University of Adelaide College obviously to the University of Adelaide, right? There are also accelerated or intensive foundation, and this is actually more suitable for the strong A-level and IB students who just unfortunately missed out on the cutoff for the direct medicine and dentistry entry. All right, and would just like to complete a short bridging program. Okay, obviously entry requirements will still apply as it's a very short program. A good example will be the University of New South Wales transition programs of 4 months, and leading up to the full program of 6 years. Okay, so you may ask what is the progression criteria. Obviously consists is almost similar to applying directly to the medicine. So as mentioned, you will require excellent foundation grades, excellent interview scores, right? And obviously excellent ISET test scores or the UCAT ANZ exam scores, right? Depending obviously on which university that you're progressing to. So there is a what if scenario. What if we do not meet the progression requirements? So what happens is that students can actually change their course preference, right? As mentioned, you can actually look into other types of programs, right? Science-based, or maybe, you know, by that time you may have discovered your true calling, yeah, and you may want to pursue that instead, right? There are also professional programs in allied health science programs, which will qualify graduates to work in the healthcare sector after they have completed their studies. So just a deep dive, following on just a deep dive, if students are exploring doing a foundation year, and of course the pros, the advantages and disadvantages, right? Advantage of doing the foundation year is that you can embark on the medicine program faster, right? Yeah, instead of doing your JC or IB, because as mentioned, the foundation can be as short as 1 year, right? As mentioned, shorter duration, right? 1+5 instead of doing it at a postgrad level. Okay, on the other hand, the disadvantage of exploring this option is there's a slightly higher risk factor, right? For students who may have missed the cutoff foundation score, right? So sometimes we do encounter that sometimes the foundation medicine may require a certain maturity of candidates, and relatively some certain students may have embarked on this pathway a little earlier, okay? But nonetheless, they can still enter other professional programs in a general health science environment, okay? And of course, for mature level students, because of this strenuous academic nature of the foundation program may not be suitable for mature candidates. So for those mature candidates, say like, especially for the boys who have done your national service, you may want to reconsider if you are thinking about doing the foundation. But do approach your assigned counselor, all right? Then he or she will be able to assist you in making the right decision. Okay, so I'll move on to the second option of exploring doing the graduate entry medicine. All right, simply, you can actually, what you do is that you can, obviously the requirement is to complete a first degree, and in fact in anything. Having said that, because subsequently if you do have a notion of entering into medicine, then it will be advisable to do a background of science background or biomedical science background, right? So these will put you in a good position when you do embark on your 4-year doctor of medicine. All right. Largely, this MD program is a conversion program for graduates of even a different background, right? So let's say also, for example, the Usd of Western Australia and the Australian National University will take in students who have in fact actually done a Bachelor of Arts or even a Bachelor of Commerce program, right? do approach, as mentioned, do approach your assigned counselor, and they will be more than happy to share with you more information on this. So this will lead on, of course, if the pathway is actually suitable. Okay, so as mentioned, these will actually apply to different people from different academic backgrounds. So simply put, a case-by-case basis, best to approach your assigned counselor. As mentioned, he or she will be able to advise you accordingly, right? So specifically applying to the A-level and IB students, say if you would like to, do the first year, 3-year bachelor's followed by the 4-year doctor of medicine, as mentioned, yeah, do explore doing a science background or biomedical science. Then you can later on, with the experience gained from your first degree, because you have exposure to science subject and biomedical science subject, yeah, this will actually put you in a good position to even think of exploring other 4-year professional degrees, right? Maybe, in the middle of your 3-year program, you may find that physio, even pharmacy, speech pathology, law, engineering is actually something that you would like to explore, in fact, all right? Okay, we have something for the Polytechnic students as mentioned, right? So with your Polytechnic diploma, you can actually look at some extensive credit, right? Anything between 0.5 to 1.5 years on your bachelor degree, right? So which means that the pathway for Polytechnic graduates is you can look at a shorter bachelor degree program as opposed to a full 3 years. This will mostly apply if you're exploring doing a bachelor degree similar content to your Polytechnic diploma. So with a shorter bachelor degree, you can still look to explore doing the Doctor of Medicine program, right? As mentioned earlier, alternate pathway as the University of Adelaide do offer a direct entry for Polytechnic graduates, right, with a science-based diploma and a minimum of a GPA 3, right? As mentioned also, for this group of students of Polytechnic diplomas, graduates, right, it will be not advisable to look at the foundation pathway, all right? Okay, similarly, weighing up the pros and cons of this graduate entry medicine, all right? So the advantages, to start with the advantages, there'll be a greater variety, right? Meaning that, by exploring this option, applicants can explore broader options like basically with your first degree, because then you have more exposure and more experience, and then you know where your strengths and weaknesses are, right? And there's greater flexibility, right? Because with that, then as you go older, you may change your minds about initial plans, and then you might want to do similarly something else, right? Okay, and then of course it's value for money, right? You would have completed one more degree, meaning that you would have a bachelor and a master's with just additional year or 2, right? And then of course with the experience gain, this will create more mature doctors, all right? And then also it can be seen as a relatively easier pathway, all right? Because say unfortunately, like for students who have landed on weak A-level grades, they can use their bachelor scores to increase their chances to studying medicine. All right, so meaning that, with your bachelor results, you can subsequently use them to apply for the MD program at a graduate entry level, right? And also, unlike with regards to the external admissions test, for example, the ISET, which is largely IQ based, and only can be done attempted once every 12 months. On the other hand, as mentioned, the GAMSAT and MCAT are content based and can be applied, or rather can be taken as much as 2 or 3 times a year. All right. And of course, any financial constraints. So sometimes, obviously, with students who may face some financial constraints, they can enter the workforce first after completing their bachelor degree, and then they will give them some time to earn and work their way to studying the MD program, right? For disadvantages, as compared, as you can see, it's not so much. It's just simply a longer duration, right? So simply like you're probably looking at 3 plus 4 years, 7 years minimally, and even more if you are working in between. Okay, so with regards, one of the other questions with regards to graduate entry medicine is, are some degrees preferred over others, right? And are there prerequisites to do graduate entry medicine? Okay, as mentioned earlier, some medical schools, they do not require students to actually attend the Bachelor of Science or Biomedical Science or Medical Science for that matter, right? Like in Australian National University and the University of Western Australia, right? They'll take in candidates with the Bachelor of Arts, even the Bachelor of Commerce, right? But of course, you still need to attend your MCAT and GAMSCAT scores, all right? As mentioned, yeah, they do not privilege one applicant over another based on their background, bachelor degree background for entry. But having said that, yes, usually having done a science-based bachelor degree would best increase the candidate's chances of a good score at the graduate admissions test, right? Generally, all in all, we would suggest that a good first degree in the biomedical science or general science, health science is strongly recommended, right? But of course, I mean, if at that point of time, if you know that you're embarking on the 4-year MD after your bachelor degree, because these will put you in good state, in a good position for you to commence your MD program subsequently, right? Okay, having said that, there are some university programs that would prefer candidates to have done certain subject prerequisites. All right, so for example, the University of Melbourne, all right, their preferred pathway is the Bachelor of Science or the Bachelor of Biomedical Science. Or in fact, the university itself offers the Bachelor of Biomedicine, right? And specifically, candidates will need to have done year 2 level of the subjects anatomy, biochemistry, and physiology, right? And also a little known fact that the anatomy component, candidates will have to have worked with a cadaver material, all right? Yes, so yeah, this one definitely will have to be take note of if you are looking to explore the bachelor degree, doing it in the University of Melbourne. All right. On the other hand, you have Monash University, right, which the first degree needs to have, which needs to contain a broad biomedical content. And as mentioned, the GAMSAT and MCAT scores are not required, but you will still have to do the situational judgment tests. Okay, I'll move on to the additional selection criteria like your admissions test and the interview. But I'll take a pause here and just get a drink. Sorry, it's going to be more than 1 hour, but I won't be breaking into another language. Don't worry. Okay, moving on, you will have your additional selection criteria, right? You have, as mentioned, for the undergrad, you have your ISET and your UCAT ANZ. And then for your interviews, a number of the universities, they do the multiple mini interviews or simply the Skype interviews in view of the current pandemic. Okay, so for the ISET, right? Okay, the ISET is to give an indication of cognitive abilities of international students who have applied for entry into the Australian university, right? It is in the form of a 3-hour computer-based exam comprising of 100 multiple choice questions, all right? These questions is designed to assess the candidate's critical reasoning and quantitative reasoning skills. All right. And we do get questions asking if there's any set content. There's no set content, no practice books available, right? But yes, ISET coaching is recommended for competitive score. All right. We have the privilege of Ankesh from Prep Zone, right? Yes, he'll be joining us later on in the presentation, and he will be the person to share with you more on this. Okay. Okay. You may ask why is a good competitive score is important, right? Simply because the ISET test can only be attempted once every 12 months. All right. So meaning that if you have done today on the 9th of January, right? You can only, if you like to improve on your scores, you can only do it on the 10th of January next year, right? And then universities will only grant you an interview based on your ISET scores. All right, so they'll need to rank the candidates as early as once they receive the ISET scores, and then from there, unfortunately, they'll start to disqualify the group of lower ranked candidates, and then only invite the group of higher ranked candidates due to resources. Okay, so also if you have a bad ISET result, unfortunately, there is no point in proceeding on doing, say, Express Foundation, for example, the 4-month transition program by UNSW Global, as you will not have sufficient time to gain a better ISET result. Okay. Also, do take note that some universities have specific ISET sitting deadlines. I think you probably caught a glimpse of Monash. Yes, in order for you to qualify for the Singapore interview round, which is usually in July, you need to actually have completed your ISET, I believe, somewhere in May. All right, and the result validity of this ISET test is 2 years. All right, so especially for the NS boys, National Service boys, right, a single result can be used for 2 application cycles. Right, so unfortunately, like say if you if you can't make the first application cycle, right? And then just take note that all this registration is individual based and is online. So you just need to refer to the indicated website. Okay, so this is how your ISET result will look like. All right, so once you have completed your ISET and have gotten your ISET result, do submit a screenshot of your ISET result to your counselor, right? He or she will forward it to the relevant universities. And the one same result will be used for all the universities that you applied to. Just a gauge, a percentile score of more than 70%, all right, will be considered a high score. But as mentioned, as this is entry is based on a competitive basis, so of course do try to attain as high a score as possible. All right, and at the point of registering, you can actually nominate the universities that you applied to receive your ISET scores result, right? But also keep your counselor in the loop so that they are aware of how the ISET results can be made known to the universities that you have applied to. Okay, I'll move on to the interviews. All right. So as mentioned, a number of the Australian universities does the MMI, right? Or multiple mini interviews, right? So largely they'll look to focus on the applicants following strengths areas, right? So you have your, some of them like your motivation, ethical and empathic reasoning, and advocacy, right? Okay, so what happens at each station is each applicant is actually given 2 minutes of reading time, followed by 8 minutes, right, to answer some questions. And at the completion of the 8 minutes, there will be a further 2 minutes changeover, right? All in all, it will take about 40 or 90 to 100 minutes to complete these stations. Okay. Subsequently, okay, applicants will be invited to attend these as mentioned, via through phone or email. So do ensure that you have more than one mobile numbers listed on your application form. Right? So just in case if the one that you provided, it's unfortunately not working at that point of time. Okay, moving on, then you will have your Zoom, Skype, phone interview, proving to be popular because obviously it's the only way now that interviews are done. Right? For UNSW, a student will be given an interview offer as soon as you have submitted all your information or in your application itself, right? Yes, so do take note that once you have submitted your application, do look out for emails. Largely, I believe they'll communicate through emails informing you of your interview timing and date. And of course, for interviews, there's usually the question of whether you should be going for coaching. Just a tip that I received from the university representatives that in fact, actually they prefer candidates not to be coached for interviews because unfortunately they tend to give robotic answers, and experienced assessors will be able to latch onto this very quickly. They will, and this will put the candidates in not a very good setting. And then for dress code, largely is to dress do a smart casual, right? It may last a few hours in the instance for Monash, right? Yeah, just take note that because for University and Adelaide especially, where they do offer both the medicine and dentistry program, say if we do have candidates that do apply for both the medicine and dentistry program for the University of Adelaide, when they do that, they do have to sit for 2 interviews. All right. So yeah, we do encounter similar incidents that unfortunately the unfortunate candidate has mixed up the interviews. So do read all emails carefully, as the duplicate emails are sometimes in fact 2 interview offers, right? And take care to also reschedule them if you're not able to make for the initial timing, right? Okay, so the following segment is on the frequent FAQs that we receive from students and parents from previous years. And we decided to collate the more popular ones here. And I'm sure that some of these will be some of the questions that you'll probably have in the back of your mind. Okay, so so to start with, yes, I probably touched this. The first question would be, which subject computation do different universities use? I believe this was covered earlier, but as this is one of the more popular questions, I will cover this again. So Monash and the University of Adelaide only takes in the best 3H2 subjects, and chemistry is a prerequisite for Monash with a minimum required B grade. As for the other universities, UNSW or University of New South Wales, they'll take in everything that you have done, all 3H2s, 3H1s, and if that were attempted, all 4H2s and the 2 or 3H1s. The University of Queensland will take in all 3H2s and any 1H1. And last but not least, Western Australia or the University of Western Australia will accept the 3H2s and 1 content-based H1. Right? And the H1 can in fact be replaced by a 4th H2 if the applicant has completed it. Okay, so the next FAQ questions is why are some 5-year programs, specifically the Monash one, and some are 6 years, right? To put it broadly, the 5-year program doesn't include a year of research, right? For the 6-year program, this can also be broken down to different structures as offered by the different universities. For example, the University of Adelaide, they use case-based learning or PBL, as more commonly known here, problem-based learning, as the dominant learning mode in the early years of the program, right? The clinical placements part will commence only from the 3rd year onwards. And other reasons for a 6-year program is the universities are using the true train structure, whereby students will embark on the Bachelor of Biomedical Science program first, and skipping the first year of the MD program and completing it with the last 3 years. Lastly, UNSW uniquely starts off with clinicals as early as in the 1st year, right? With research components commencing as early as in the 4th year itself. But having said this, their medicine program is starting online this academic year as with last year, so as usual, right? So yeah, if you can still proceed to apply for the UNSW medicine program, right? And then for the next FAQ questions at the bottom, when do I commence my medicine studies, or is there a mid-year intake? Okay, the short answer is in February or March every year. There is no mid-year intake for these programs. Okay, the next one, listen up. Okay, this next question is more for the NS boys. Are deferments allowed? Right? Okay, so as you can see, Monash University do not allow deferments. Right? So the NS boys will only commence their Monash applications in the 2nd year of their national service, but do take note of the application deadlines, right, for this particular intake as indicated earlier. For the rest of the universities, University of Adelaide and the University of Sydney will offer deferments of up to 3 years, specifically for national service reasons, and the University of Western Australia and UNSW will also offer deferments of up to a year, right? Do take note that, okay, for these deferments means that for the NS boys, you can attempt applying for the university 2 times. Right, meaning that if you do get an offer in the 1st year, you can just simply defer to the 2nd year when you have already ORD. On the other hand, of course, I mean, touch wood, if you missed out qualifying in your 1st year, you can re-attempt again in your 2nd year of national service. Deferment requests are generally granted, right, and based on national service reasons, right. The universities do accept deferment requests, but also on a case-by-case basis, right? Some reasons that they are open to consideration are compassionate reasons or a bereavement in the family. Okay, so some questions, the next popular FAQ question is how early can you apply, right? So this ties in with the question that I answered just before. Right, so all in all, you can try 1 year ahead of your desired correct intake, right? But of course, do take note that with the different universities with regards to their deferment policies, right? So if they do allow deferments, chances are you can apply a little year earlier, right? So firstly, of course, determine the correct intake. For the boys, of course, it will be after they ORD, right? And then let's say if for the boys, which your ORD date could be a few weeks past the February-March intake, you can look into applying for disruption of your NS service. But of course, this is subject to approval from your unit. And this varies from case to case or different units basis. Okay. Yeah, and then on the other hand, of course, for the universities that do not approve deferrals, simply just apply 1 year ahead of your desired intake, right? Yeah, so basically, yeah, the following is what I've shared earlier. Okay, so with this, yes, what is the application timeline and when can I get my offer? Okay, so this ties into your ranking and rolling offers, all right? Okay, your ranking offers simply means that all candidates, the application deadline is relatively early or done at the middle of the year, whereby all the candidates ISET scores or the external admission test and your entry scores are tabulated and interview scores are tabulated and ranked accordingly. All right. So once these scores are tabulated, the UST will start to issue offers to the group of top ranked students. All right, and then these will move on until all places are filled. On the other hand, the rolling offers, which means that as long the particular UST that practices rolling offers has a set passing mark in their entry scores, their external admissions tests, and their interview scores. So as long as candidate has passed all three stages and attained or overall passing cutoff scores, they will be issued an offer as early as 1 to 2 weeks after your score has been tabulated. So generally, for the USTs that practice rolling offers, their offers will be out almost as soon as the interview is done, right? Whereas on the other hand, for USTs that do the ranking offers, largely their offers are only issued in the second half of the year. Moving on, do all require an interview? Yes. Largely, some of the USTs like Monash, Usd of Western Australia, and Usd of Adelaide, they do the multiple mini interviews. And what different kinds of interviews are there? As mentioned, largely due to the pandemic, these is restricted to Skype, Zoom, obviously online interviews, or maybe even a phone interview. Okay, so you may be asking if there are scholarships. Unfortunately, for medicine and dentistry, there is none, right? But for if you are looking to explore University of Auckland, they do offer scholarships that cover this, right? You may look into defraying the cost. You may look to offsetting the cost. Okay. One of the little options that you may want to look at is doing part-time work. You will be on a student visa when you are over there, and your student visa entitles you to a maximum of 40 hours every fortnight, every 2 weeks. And in fact, unlimited hours during vacation time, right? But do note, as medical students, especially in the later years of your program, you will find that you will be spending a certain amount of time on your clinical placements. All right, so do exercise with care with regards to exercising your working part-time option. Okay. Okay, so what are the associate costs with regards to medicine? Obviously, the tuition fees, right, is reflected in our medicine matrix, which you can easily approach your assigned counselors. Do take note that Australian universities' tuition fees do increase slightly every year, right? And this is due to inflation and subjected anything between 3 to 5% yearly, right? And then you would have your compulsory health cover, namely your overseas student health cover. All in all, you would be looking at a coverage of 500 Australian dollars a year. All right, so with Monash, the shortest at 5 years, you'll be looking at possibly about 2,500. Following on is the living cost with regards to the different cities. Of course, if you notice, usually the more expensive cities to live in is Sydney and Melbourne, ranging from 18,000 to 25,000. And then they range downwards to other cities, Brisbane, Canberra, Perth, and Adelaide. So this is something that you may want to look at if when selecting the universities. Okay, yeah. Now for the really tricky question, all right, what if I've just missed the entry requirement by 1 or 2 points? Right? Unfortunately, it's a hard entry score, meaning that it has to be the actual cutoff score or above, right? Yeah, the short answer is no. You have to meet the entry requirement or above that score. But having said this, if you do not have if you do not get an offer, you can explore alternative pathways to the medicine. As mentioned, you can do it at the foundation level, graduate entry, and do explore further the advantages and disadvantages of this pathway. And similarly, at this point of time, to do look into attempting the SATs, the SATs, with regards to Monash and the University of New South Wales Medicine Program. As mentioned, both universities will take in these results in place of your Year 12 A-level or IB scores. Okay, I'll discuss we're almost approaching to the end, but I will touch on the application itself. Of course, obviously the following is what you will need, right? And rest assured, your assigned counselor will be assisting you on this. But just to give you a brief is that obviously you will need the individual application form. Supplementary form will apply strictly to the University of New South Wales, right? It will be an online application. Your counselor will guide you through this if you are looking at the University of New South Wales. And obviously the basis of your application, your IB, your GCA levels, certificates and transcripts, right? Some of the universities do accept predicted grades, but it need to be backed up by the actual grades once it's available. Okay. Similarly, for the ones that are exploring foundation, you will need to show your IGCSE or your GCO level results. We do understand that we have a small category of students attempting the integrated programs. You can use your internal Year 4 results and the IP certificate certifying that you are embarking on the IP program. For medicine, the application fee will apply, ranging anything from 100 to 150. And this is unfortunately not waived even at our open day events, right? Just an idea that some universities like University of Adelaide and University of New South Wales, they do charge an application fee for their medicine programs. You may ask if personal statements, references, medical experience statements, whether they are needed. In fact, they are not, but you can include them, but do take note that the universities may not take them into consideration. All right. As mentioned, largely they'll assess them on the three main things: your entry scores or Year 12 results, your external admissions test like your ISET or UCAT ANZ, and your interview scores. Okay, just take note, certain things with regards to your application. As mentioned, your English proficiency grade standards will apply, right? Monash will be looking at a minimum of a B grade for your GP. But you'll be heartened to know that if you didn't have this, you can actually approach IDP and take on the Ielts or the International English Language Test System test, which is held by IDP, right? Meaning that this is an internationally recognized English language test. And we have noticed that most of the Year 12 students simply breeze through these tests and simply overcoming the English language requirement, right? On the other hand, for your postgrad and graduate entry MD applicants, as your bachelor degree will be required, so your transcripts, award certificates, grading scales, and also a CV would be ideal. Okay, so last but not least, I've in fact actually reached the end of the presentation. Okay, let me see if I can get hold of the questions. Okay, yes, we do have a number of questions here. Okay, so I have the first question as are both ISET and UCAT ANZ required by international? No. Okay, just put it plainly, the different Australian universities will require different external admissions tests. With the exception of Adelaide, the rest of the Australian universities would require the ISET. Only the University of Adelaide does the UCAT ANZ. All right. All right. Yeah, I touched on this for the next question. For that matter, the question is for Monash, meaning the Singapore boys could only apply after getting their A levels, while in NS, okay, as mentioned, Monash doesn't do deferments. So what happens is the Monash boy, or rather the NS boys, you will apply usually in your second year of national service. Second year of national service, all right? So do take note, you need to, best if you can approach your counselor after probably, after getting your A-level results, because there's little factors like when you're being enlisted and also obviously when you're ORD. So these will affect when you will commence your medicine degree. So my suggestion is once you receive your A-level results, do pay a visit to your counselor so that he or she can time your application accordingly. All right? Yes, okay, the next question is, does University of Sydney not require any admissions test? Yes, you have been observant. Yes, they do not require an admissions test. All right? Okay, for the University of Sydney, what test is required for the 480 points cutoff? Okay, my apologies with regards to this question. Okay, I'll spend some time on this. Okay, simply put, this 480 points is actually tabulated from the University of Sydney admissions table, meaning that the University of Sydney actually has their own way of tabulating the GCA level results. All right, so you simply have already completed your A levels. So based on your A level results, your H2s and your H1s, these will actually qualify you for a certain point system. Okay, so with that, you can actually see that whether based on your A level results, whether you have met the 480 points cutoff. My apologies on this, but if you can approach your assigned counselor, he or she will be more than happy to explain to you how this works. But you did not attempt any further tests, just the test that you have done. If you have done the year 12, your A-level results, that would, you simply need to just calculate from there whether it met the 480 points cutoff. Okay, for the next question, I'm a JC1 this year, and I want to ask, how much an advantage do people have when they take bio over physics? Okay, okay, this one, to be honest, if we're looking at just the scores wise, there wouldn't be much advantage because it would just be treated as any H1 or rather your H2 subjects. But I believe this question can be best answered by our student leaders, our medicine student leaders later on who will be coming on to this presentation. So I believe my colleague will be keeping note of this and seeing if they can face this question to the student leaders. So Yushen, do stay on and look out for the answers coming from the student leaders, because I believe this question will be more prevalent to the course content. All right. Okay, so the next one question is the 3+4 program, MD program or same as graduate. Okay, okay, you can say that, okay, because you have completed the 3+4, you will be graduating with 2 degrees, all right? The 3-year bachelor degree, right? And your 4-year, you will still get your MD at the end, all right? So simply put, it is a MD degree plus your 3 years bachelor degree. So you'll get 2 qualifications. So simply, if as compared to graduate, yeah, so yeah, you would say similarly, yeah, you will probably have completed your bachelor degree somewhere else, but also you would complete successfully your MD, right? Okay, hi, may I clarify, moving on to the next question. Hi, may I clarify if I'm a student taking A-levels this year, intending to enter university next year, when is the most suitable time to apply? Thanks. Okay, to answer your question, I need to start off with the general process. Okay, usually for Australia and New Zealand, application process is 1 year in the making, meaning that students or candidates will spend 1 year applying to the universities because of the interview schedules. right? You need to set time for the interview, and also obviously you need to set time to attend your external admissions test, right? Your ISET or your UCAT ANZ. Having said this, okay, the UNSW, they will issue an offer, or you may have an opportunity of doing this with the University of New South Wales, simply because they'll take in your the SAT score. So if you have done your SAT results and you have attained the SAT result that is met the entry requirement, right? You can look to apply. And then of course, but of course you will need to apply well before, because they will need to schedule you for the interview. And of course you will need to set some time to prepare and attend your ISET test. All right, so with that in mind, meaning to answer your question, you can consider closely the UNSW, but it will be a very packed year for you, in the sense that you need to take on the interviews and taking the ISET test, right? For further details, as mentioned, approach your assigned counselor. Okay, the next question I have is, will UCAT ANZ be viewed as favorably compared to UCAT by the university? Okay, to answer your question, right, the universities have a very set external admissions test, meaning that they have only set the UCAT ANZ as so-called their preferred admissions test example. So unfortunately, all candidates who are interested in, say, for example, the University of Adelaide and University of Otago, the university will only take in the UCAT ANZ as opposed to any other form of external admissions test. Okay. Moving on to the next question. All right, is the University of Adelaide the only universities that has the MBBS? All right, okay, this one, okay, to answer your question, I'm not sure whether you'll be glad to know, but okay, moving on, Nick, or rather, in fact, this year, the University of Adelaide will be changing their format, all right? They will not be doing the MBBS. The MBBS last year was the last year that they will do the MBBS. This year, they are offering the Bachelor of Medical Science / Doctor of Medicine, similar to the other Australian universities, right? So to answer your question, yeah, going forward this year, they will not be offering MBBS anymore, right? No, yes, the next question is, does the University of Sydney have the MBBS undergraduate? The short answer is no. Yeah, they only offer the Doctor of Medicine, all right? So yeah, so it's only available at the post or rather graduate entry level, but they do offer the true train, meaning the 3 years, but it will be a Bachelor of Science, medical science of sorts, then leading up to the Doctor of Medicine. All right. Let me see. Okay, will overseas medicine degrees be recognized when you come back to Singapore? Okay, this is a good question, but yes, they are, but you definitely need to look into which ones are these. All right, one of my slides which I've shared that is largely the group of 8 universities, the ones that I've shared earlier, right? So do check out the ones that are certified by the Singapore Medical Council, or SMC for short. They are usually depicted on the website itself. Do log in and apply to the correct ones. Right? Okay. I do it now. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm running out of time. So for the following questions, I will answer them to texting them. Right. Okay. With that, I have just hold on. Yeah. Okay. With that, I thank you for your kind attention. But I will pass on the presentation now back to my colleague Cheryl. Thanks, Cheryl.
Hi everyone, thank you, Farid. That was a very succinct overview of the various pathways to medicine and dentistry, whether it be through direct admissions, which is 5 or 7 years, depending on the school, or graduate admissions, which is a conversion degree after your first degree, or the foundation pathway, which is a 1+5 or 6. Whatever pathway you choose is highly specific and really depends on the individual, your academic background, your preferences, your budget, your test scores, so many factors, right? So definitely convey this to your education counselor, as Farah has said, so they can help you navigate through these difficult decisions. After this session, as we said in some of you have asked in the chat, but we said IDP's counseling team will be following up with you within the next few days to answer your education related questions and to help you out with your applications, whether it be for the upcoming intake or the next, and you'll be allotted to an education counselor to counsel you and help you out with your applications and keep you abreast of all the updates on admissions and call you out for your interviews throughout, basically, from start to the end, and we'll keep in contact with you until you enroll. Counseling for medicine and dentistry is highly specific and very information heavy and can get extremely detailed. Often requires timeline planning, very like months ahead. So definitely get in touch with us or wait for a call. Now, don't worry if you miss any of the information on the screen. All the information matrices for professional programs are also updated at specific times in the year. So if you're graduating much later, it will also be good to get up-to-date copies at a later date. As Farah has said, your education counselor will be able to provide that to you directly at the time of your application. Yeah. Okay. Now, sorry about this. Now, without further ado, let me present Mr. Ankesh Dharat from PrepZone Academy, who will be taking you through some quick tips on admissions test preparation. Now, you'll want to give this your fullest attention because quite unlike the SATs, practice materials for ISAT and UCAT are not for sale in the public. For those of you who are not aware of what PrepZone is, IDP works with a number of partners to provide you with all the extra preparation you need, and PrepZone is one of our professional test trainers and one of the largest in the industry as well. And they've been training students in medical admissions tests for over 6 years now. Now, due to this time frame, the time frame that we have today, Ankesh will not be covering the graduate admissions tests today, the MCAT and the GAMSAT. So if you're looking at these programs instead, you're absolutely welcome to sit through this session still, or to connect with Ankesh and his team later, or you can log back in at about 12:30 or so for the panel discussion segment, where we have both undergrad and graduate medicine students. Okay, I'll hand the time over to you, Ankesh.
Thank you, Cheryl. I'll just pull up my slides, 1 second. Okay. Thank you, Cheryl. I hope all of you can hear me. My name is Ankesh, and I represent PrepZone Academy. I'm one of the course managers over there. We've been teaching ISAT and UCAT ANZ for a while now for students for the past 6-7 years now. So we are well aware of what ISAT basically tests you on, what UCAT ANZ is all about, because UCAT ANZ is
Go for it. Yeah, thanks.
So UCAT ANZ is a new addition to Australian medicine standardized test. This was introduced last year. Before that, it was PQA, which now has converted into UCAT ANZ. So moving on, I will be going through what are the different sections that are involved in ISAT and UCAT ANZ, and what are the different kind of questions that you might be facing. Because as Cheryl mentioned, ISAT does not have too much materials available outside for purchase. So when you go into the website you basically have to apply through Acer, and you find like very minimal materials that are available for ISAT at least. UCAT ANZ is similar to the UCAT UK. So when you go ahead and find things for UCAT, you can basically refer to the UCAT UK books, and that should be more than sufficient. So moving on to the descriptions. Now, when an international student applies to Australia, what are the different requirements that they have? So they have 3 different requirements. One is basically academic performance. So that's the first thing that any university in Australia would look at, your academic performance. It's already been mentioned that you have to have good academic results throughout, so that you can apply to good schools in Australia. Second thing that you require is standardized tests. So this is where I will be giving you more information on basically what are the different standardized tests, what are the requirements, when do you have to take the test, what are the different sections involved, and what are the different kind of questions that you might have to face when you're taking the ISAT or the UCAT ANZ. The last thing is the interview. Now these 3 things will comprise you, will basically give you an offer, right? So moving on to the standardized test. So the first standardized test I will be speaking about is ISAT. As I mentioned, there is very little information that is given in terms of what kind of questions come out for ISAT, what are the different sections involved in it. So I will be giving everyone a brief on this, and then giving you questions to solve. We will be solving it together, and then moving on to the UCAT ANZ after this. Okay, so what's the structure? So what's the exam structure for the ISAT? ISAT has 2 sections. One is critical reasoning, the other one is quantitative reasoning. It has 100 questions in total that you need to do, and the entire time that is given is 3 hours. So in 3 hours, you will be given 100 questions. Just to give you an idea, there is no place which says, oh, there will be a 50% division between critical reasoning and quantitative reasoning. So you need to be well aware of what kind of questions can come out for critical reasoning or quantitative reasoning, because they can ask you any questions, any number of questions for either critical reasoning or quantitative reasoning. So please take note that when you're studying for ISAT, just learn the entire thing, because you never know what kind of questions might come out and how many questions can come out for critical, how many questions can come out for quantitative. The scoring system, the 100 questions, the entire test will be scaled into, the raw score will be scaled into a score between 100 to 200. So keep in mind, the raw scores are, the higher the raw score, the bigger the scale score that you can get. Now, over the years, we have seen a lot of students, we have taught a lot of students ISAT. So we have come to a conclusion in terms of what are the highest percentile scores. So over there, what is a good score? A good score is around 183 and above. That gives you a 90th percentile. Now these percentiles, just to make sure, they change every time. So this cycle, it could be 183, which is 90th percentile. Next cycle could be 185. So do not base yourself, oh, I should get 183. You should try to get as high as possible, so that at the end of it, ISAT is not the reason for your scores. Now, moving on, when does ISAT happen? So ISAT has changed now. Up until 2018, it was between March till Feb. Now it's 4 cycles in a year. And in that cycle, you get 14 days to take the test. Within that 14 days, any test date you can pick and take the test. Now, this year's cycle is as follows. Cycle 1, which is upcoming, January 11th to January 25th. Cycle 2 is May, 17th May to 31st May. Cycle 3 is August 9th to August 23rd. And cycle 4 is November 8th to November 22nd. Now, generally students have a question, when should I take the test, right? Now that depends, when are you planning to apply as well. So if a student is planning to apply, say in 2022 intake, so for the upcoming Feb 2022 intake, and you've just graduated from A-levels, you can potentially start working on your ISAT. So you can either take the test in January or I would say May latest, because you have the time from now until May to prepare for the test. If you are in, say, NS, and if you are someone who would want to take the test in advance, you can do that as well. And then basically take the test this year and keep it for 2 years. So because the validity of the test is 2 years. Okay. Now, exam format, as I mentioned, ISAT is basically a computer-based test, and it has 2 sections, critical reasoning and quantitative reasoning. I will be going through a few questions so that everyone has an idea of what kind of questions or what type of questions are tested in both critical reasoning and quantitative reasoning. Now, as the name suggests, it is more to do with your aptitudes and skills. There is no science involvement in it. So you must have learned science in your A-levels, IB, or you must be doing poly. Nothing is tested based on that. It's critical reasoning, quantitative reasoning. Okay, let's look at some examples of quantitative reasoning first, and then moving on, I'll be explaining critical reasoning, and then after that, UCAT ANC. Now, this is a typical example of quantitative reasoning. Now, before this, let me just give you an idea of what quantitative reasoning asks a student of. So since it's a computer-based test, there is, first of all, no calculator allowed, okay? And since there is no calculator allowed, a lot of students have issues doing mental math. So this is one of the key skills that students need to have when they are doing quantitative reasoning, because you will be asked to form equations, form ratios, number properties, sets, Venn diagram, statistics, grades, counting, logic-based questions, logical reasoning questions. So mental math skills definitely come in handy, right? So for example, in this question, so have a look at this question. I'll give you like 30 seconds, 40 seconds to have a look at this question. It is very simple question, but again, these type of questions are tested. It is completely quant-based, so whatever you study in your, say, O-level math or like the first year of A-levels, that's the extent of your quantitative reasoning that is tested in ISAT. So I'll give you 30 seconds, have a look at the question, and then we will solve this question together. If anybody has any answers, you can just write down the answers, and I can solve that as well along with everyone. Okay, so let's look at the question. What does it say? So there is a graph given on the right and there is a text given on the left. So since the entire test takes you 3 hours and there are 100 questions to solve, that gives you about, I would say, slightly over a minute and a half to solve a question. So that also plays a role. So timing is also one thing that you need to take in mind, because there can be questions like these where you have to do multiple calculations to get to the answer. So looking at this question, now the table on the right gives you food and energy per 100-gram calorie. So for example, mealworm, 100 grams, the calorie is 150 calories. So peanuts, 100 per 100 grams, the calories is 560. Now, why is this given to us? Looking at the text on the left side, a trainee volunteer has been asked to prepare a sample of a special mix to provide exactly 5,000 calories. He has weighed out the first 4 ingredients. The first 4 ingredients are given right below. Mealworm, 150 grams. Apple, 150 grams. Raisins, 250 grams. Fruit, 125 grams. Now the question is, what mass of sunflower seeds must be used to successfully complete the task? Now basically, based on the weight of the 4 ingredients, you will have to figure out how many calories are those. Then the next step would be minusing that many calories from the calories which is required, which is 5,000. Then you need to figure out how many grams of sunflower seeds is required, right? So it is all calculations. It's a very simple calculation. So basically, mealworm, if you see, it's 150 grams, right? And the energy over there, energy is given, and the calories are given per 100 gram. So if you look at it, mealworm, 100 grams, the calories is 150. How much would it be for 150 grams? So how would you solve that? So 100 grams is equal to 150 calories. 1 gram is 150 over 100. So how much would 150 be? So 150 by 100 into 150. So basically we formed an equation over here to find mealworm 150 grams, how many calories? So over here, again, if you don't know mental math, this will be tricky for students who only use calculators. So my advice is to please start learning tables, start learning plus minuses that you can do on your fingertips. Try to understand how to solve questions faster, right? Over here, it's all zeros. So basically this goes, this goes, this goes, this goes. So the remaining is 15 into 15, right? So if you don't know the table of 15, then you would have to do the longer method. But if you know the table of 15, it's pretty simple. The answer is 225 calories. Okay, so that's just for the mealworm. Similarly, you have to look at the apple. So apple, same 150 grams. So an easier method to do is 100 grams, 350 calories. 150 grams is basically 1.5 times of 100 grams. So similarly, if you do 1.5 times of the calories for 350 or say 150 for mealworm, that will give you the answer, which was mealworm 225. Apple will come up to 525 calories. Similarly, let's look at raisins. Raisins, 250 grams. So raisins over here, sorry, I'll just erase this. Okay. So raisins over here is 300 grams, right? Sorry, raisins is 250 grams, and that is basically 2.5 times of 100 grams. So 300 into 2.5 will give you the number of calories, which will be 750. Then looking at suit is 1.25 times of calories. So that will come up to 750. Suit is 800 into 1.25, that's 1,000 calories. So now to find the fifth one, which is sunflower seed, how many calories are remaining? So 225 calories plus 525 calories plus 750 calories plus 1,000. The answer will be 2,500 over there. So you minus off 2,500 from what you need. That gives you 2,500 as the remaining calories. Now from this, you will have to find out sunflower seed mass. So sunflower seed mass, 100 grams is 500 calories. Now it's a reverse. So you're given calories, now you need to find the mass. 100 grams, 500 calories. 2,500 grams, 2,500 calories will give you how many grams? Which is 5 times. So 500 calories into 5, 2,500 calories. Similarly, 100 grams multiplied by 5 will give you 500 grams. So that is basically your answer. So you see over here, it is not difficult math, but it is a lot of calculations. So at the end of it, mental math skills would definitely be a huge part of your quantitative reasoning. When you take the test at the test centers, you will be given laminated sheets, so you don't have to carry rough papers. So they'll give you a laminated sheet, they'll give you a pen, which you can write that on the laminated sheet, and then you can do your calculations. But the more time you spend doing the longer methods, the less time you have for the remaining questions. So keep in mind that learn mental math skills, learn how to do calculations faster before you go for your actual ISAT test. So this is one type of question that comes out for quantitative reasoning. So I'll move on to the next question. Okay, moving on to the next question. So this is a second type of question that you might see in a typical quantitative reasoning section. So this is one page of text. Then the question is on the next slide. So this is the question. And there's a graph over there as well. So Sorry. Okay, so this is the text and this is the graph, and there's a question right next to it. So this is a very typical kind of question. It is more of a logical based question. So keep note that it's not just going to be a typical problem solving question that you might have to work on. Definitely logical based questions come out more often in this because it's quantitative reasoning. So it has to be something reasoning based as well than just normal problem solving questions. So I'll give you a minute to just look at the question first. And then I'll just give you the answer in terms of what you should be looking at and what does these notions mean. Okay. So that's figure 1 and figure 2 at the bottom. So this typical question is basically giving you the directions, and it's giving you traffic light signals, and it's giving you the arrows to where to turn basically, and they have given you what the abbreviations are for NS, NW, SN, SE, WE, EW, right? So over here you see that NW and SE are the two turning arrows, right? And they have given you like what the green signal, what the yellow signal, what the red signal notion means. So G, Y, and R. Similarly, the green arrow is A, right? Now the question over here is basically when during T1, traffic can move from which direction to which direction. Okay, so on top, the top diagram gives you the signals. So R is basically the red signal, A is basically the green arrow, R is again the red signal, G is the green signal, Y is the yellow signal. At the bottom, it gives you the directions, right? And it's given you a compass on which is north, which is south, which is east, and which is the west side. Okay. Now, looking at this question, it will take a bit of time to understand how to get around solving these kind of questions. You would have to read most of it to understand the question and then figuring out what this figure means, right? Now over here, I will not go in detail on what each and every part of the text means. It just says each of traffic lights NS, SN, WE, EW displays in succession of green, yellow, and red. And it's given you when NW and SE arrows are green, traffic controlled by each of these arrows is free to turn, right? And when traffic can still turn when NS and SN respectively are green. So similarly, the question over here says T1 traffic can move from. So what does T1 to T6 mean? So these are signal succession phases from T1 to T6. So if you look at the top graph, it has the horizontally it says T1 to T6. Vertically it says column-wise it says the different traffic lights and where can they move, right? So if T1 is allowed to move, NW and SE are green arrows, all the others are red, right? So if you look at the graph below, where is basically NW and SE going? So northwest and southeast. Okay, so you can go northwest and southeast. So over here, the the options over here give you, can the traffic go from east to west? No, that does not. NW and SE does not mean that it can go from east to west. C is west to east. Oh, sorry, west to north. No, again, it's not allowed to go from west to north. D is north to south. Again, not allowed, because north and south both are, the traffic cannot go from north to south. B, on the other hand, is the right answer, south to east. So northwest and southeast. So southeast is basically going from south to the east side. So that's the answer. So again, this is a logical based question. I did not go through what each and every text meant in this, but it is a lengthy question, and this is just one part of the question. So similarly, there will be different questions that can come out for the same text. So when you're reading the text, read it properly, because you would be needing it for multiple questions. Okay, so moving on to the next part of the ISAT, which is critical reasoning. Critical reasoning, as the topic suggests, is more of English-based questions. I mentioned this before. There are no indications anywhere how many questions can come out for critical reasoning, how many questions can come out of quantitative reasoning. So be well prepared for all types of questions. Now, critical reasoning tests you on 5 different aspects, which are listed right there. One is passage-based. So this is the typical reading comprehension passage. Now, it could be short passages, it could be long passages. It depends on the questions that they're asking. And every question will have either one or even more than one question based on that passage. Okay. Second type of critical reasoning question is graph and figure interpretation. Now, some people can confuse this with quantitative reasoning sections. That's one of the reasons why they don't have a distinction between the number of questions which can come out for quantitative reasoning and critical reasoning. So graphs and figure interpretation, how to differentiate between quant question and a critical question. If in the question or in the graph that is given to you, you asked to say solve a question, or they've given you numbers in those, it definitely means it's a quantitative question. In a graph and figure interpretation kind of question, you will only be given graphs, and you'll be asked to basically stare at it and then find, and then there's a question based on that graph that you would have to analyze and answer, right? So that's a typical graph and figure interpretation question. Now, categorization questions. Categorization questions basically test your ability on identifying key features and sort them into relevant categories. Okay. Quotes analysis is again a very different question than anybody has seen these kind of questions before in their lives. So be prepared for those questions as well. So these basically you'll have to identify unique topics, what is author referring to, or what are the links between the different quotes and all of those. Okay. Argumentative analysis is basically there'll be again short passages where you have to analyze and give analyze the topic, the passage, and provide an argument to it. So there'll be options given to you, and then based on that particular passage, which argument is the best fit? That's the basic question for a critical reasoning question. I'll go through a few examples on these so that you have an idea of what you would be facing during critical reasoning questions. I will go through the non-traditional ones so that students have an idea of what they would be facing. So this is a typical, I would say, graphical representation, interpretation kind of question, fuzzy logic map. So again, I'll give you like a minute or a minute to have a look at and understand the whole graph. And then basically we'll solve it together. Okay, let's try and see what is this complicated graph or complicated diagram that's given to you. Now, it seems a very complicated diagram, but if you look at the question, you will understand what is this diagram referring to. So the question says, the fuzzy logic map indicates the effects of an increase in any of the elements that influences drug usage. So basically, the end goal is this, drug usage, right? And anything before or after is indicating an increase to that element or decrease to that element, right? So for example, international police intervention, if that increases, what will happen, right? If that increases, there will be an lesser effect. So there'll be less corruption. If police intervention increases, there'll be less profits. There'll be less profits. There'll be less drug availability in the market. There will be less area under cultivation, and there'll be less cartels effectiveness. Okay, so this is what the arrows mean. So if something increases, what's the effect of that, right? Similarly, if you look at, okay, drug availability. So if the plus and minus are basically an increase and decrease. So if drug availability increases, what will happen? So if it increases, profits will go up, right? So if corruption increases, for example, what will happen? Corruption increases, drug availability will increase, profits will increase, right? So this is what this whole diagram is referring to. What is the increase in effects of any particular element which has increase or decrease effect, right? So let's look at the question now. The question is basically, which of the following pairs are mutually enforcing? So what does mutually enforcing mean? Is basically they're strengthening each other's effect. So that is, if A increases, B, if A increases B, B should also increase A, right? So that's basically what mutually enforcing means. So where can we find that? Let's look at the answer choices and see which one is the best fit. Okay. So Answer choice. So answer choice 1, corruption and profit. Okay. So if corruption increases, profit increases. So over here, if you see, if corruption increases, profit increases. But there is no going back to corruption. So there is no link to corruption back. So there is only if A increases, B does not have the same effect on A. Okay, so this is not the answer. Let's look at the other one. Let's look at C. Drug dealers' effectiveness and area under cultivation. So drug dealers' effectiveness is here, and area under cultivation is here. So you see over here, there is no connection between these two. There are no arrows that indicate which goes to from here to here. If there is no connection, and this does not come back to this. So this again has no mutually enforcement. D over here says international police intervention and local police intervention. So international police intervention is here, local police intervention is here. Similarly, there is no mutually exclusiveness between these two. There are arrows going from international intervention, but there is no going back. Again, this is not mutually reinforcing. Option B, on the other hand, says drug availability and price of cocaine. So where are these? Drug availability is here, and price of cocaine is here. So when drug availability increases, drug usage increases, which has an effect on price of cocaine. So price of cocaine increases. If price of cocaine increases, drug dealers' effectiveness increases, which increases in the drug availability. So you see over here, there is a link which goes back to drug availability, and there's a link which comes to price of cocaine. So this is how you would have to look at the graph, the diagram, and then try to find answers based on the questions that are asked. So the answer over here is B. Okay, so that was one type of question that is tested in critical reasoning. Let's move on to the next type. Now this is a typical court analysis question. Again, as I said before, this is something which nobody has seen before as well. What does this thing is all about? So have a look at this. Have a look at all the statements given over here. Have a look at the questions given over here. And we will try and solve the question together. So I'll give you a minute to just digest this question. Okay, I hope everybody is seeing what the question here means and what is it say. So basically there are 6 statements given over here, and each statement has a question attached to it, right? I'll go through the first 3 statements so that you have an idea of what the questions are looking at. So statement one, let's look at that. So statement one is basically quoting, you talk of the sword of time and the tooth of time, but I tell you, time is toothless and no blade, and has no blade. It is we who chew like worms and strike like sword. Right? So that's a quote that is given, statement that is given. And then based on that, the first question says, statement one suggests that, right? So what do you understand by this statement is what the question is asking. So what are the different, what does the statement mean? So the statement basically is giving you a contrast between time and you, right? That time is toothless, it has no blades, but you can chew like worm and strike like a sword. So where does this part come in the answer choice, right? So the typical, okay, so let's look at the answer choices. Time is inevitable, destructive, doesn't state that. Time gives life and takes it away, it doesn't say that also. D, the march of time is inevitable and all falls before it, doesn't state that. C says humans, not time, are the great destructors. Right? So basically it means time, again, if you look at the statement time, it says time is toothless, time has no blade, but humans like you or us, like me, we can destroy things. We can eat with our mouth. So that's what the statement is suggesting. So answer over here is C. Okay. So looking at the statement now, again, this is how you would have to analyze these kind of statements, and then move on to solving the questions that are asked of you. So looking at statement number two over here says, think that you are not yet born, that you are young, that you are old, that you are dead, that you are in the world beyond the grave. Right? Grasp all that you in your thoughts at once, all times and places. So sometimes questions like statements, you don't even have to read the full thing. Now here the first statement, that the first line, the whole thing, it doesn't make too much sense. So you just look at the next line, which is grasp all that in your thoughts at once, all times and places. Now look at the question. Question says, statement 2 is an invitation to imagine what, right? So over here, the first part is to think. Okay, so over here, the thing is, look at the answer choices. The answer choices is basically giving you the imagination of the statement, right? So B says holding everything in the mind at once. No. A full consciousness of the present instant. It doesn't say that. Following time from creation to present moment. Nope. Answer choice A, which is a world of absolute time and place. So grasp all that that in your thoughts at once, all times and places. So basically, it's a world of absolute time and place. Right? So the answer choice over here is A. Let's look at statement number 3. Statement number 3 over here is absolute true and mathematical time flows evenly without relation to anything external. Right? And the question is, in statement 3, time is viewed as what? Right? So over here, time is absolute and true. It flows without anything external. So it doesn't have any link to anything, right? So if you look at the answer choices, the statement number A gives the right answer. So like in infinite space. So like infinite space, it doesn't have any connection to anything. So that's why the answer choice comes out to be A. I hope these kind of questions are not scaring you, but you can't avoid these kind of questions. They will come out. You will have at least 3 to 4 questions of quote analysis, at least 3 to 4 questions of graphical representation, interpretation kind of questions. So when you look out for preparation, or when you look out to start preparing for the ISAT, you will find half a test which is given by ASAT. They will give you about 50 questions in total, which will conclude in your head that, okay, these kind of questions can come out. But there are many more questions that are tested, which they do not specify in the ASAT test. So I would suggest look out for other tests, or find some place that you can go about studying for ISAT. Okay, so there's one thing left over here. There is this. Okay, that was ISAT for you guys. I hope these kind of questions that you have looked at are something, again, quantitative reasoning more or less is math, but definitely those logical reasoning questions are something that you would have to work on your when you're preparing for the test. Critical reasoning is not typical only traditional passage-based questions. There are other questions as well. So the more practice you get or you find for ISAT, the better you get in terms of knowing what kind of questions will come out. Okay. Moving on to the second type of standardized test, the UCAT ANZ. As I said before, UCAT ANZ is a new test. Okay, UCAT ANZ is a new test which is for Australian schools. This test was introduced in 2018. Before that was PQA, and it's only for one school. It's used for University of Adelaide. I would go through again. I'll go through the whole content for what is tested in the UCAT ANZ, what kind of questions come out. I'll just breeze through the type of questions. We don't have too much time at the moment. I'll just give you an idea of what UCAT ANZ is all about and what you will be facing. This is new for everyone. Just to give you an idea, if you have applied for UK before, it is the same test. UCAT ANZ and UCAT UK doesn't have any difference. So please, if you have done the UCAT UK before, you don't have to worry about it. But if you're only applying to Australia, this is something that you would have to work towards. Okay. Moving on to what is it, when does it happen, and what are the policies? So UCAT happens every year in a certain time frame. The registration generally starts in March. So the test registration for this year is March 1st to 17th May. Testing period is between July till August 11th. It is a computer-based test, so please keep in mind no calculators, physical calculators are allowed. You will get an online screen calculator. So, but if you ask me, that if you start using that as your way of calculating, you're losing time. I'll explain why. Why is time a really big essence in the UCAT in the next slide. You can take the test only once in that cycle. So, so if you are planning to apply for 2026, say 2022 intake, this year is the year that you will have to sit for the test, and that's the score which is valid for 2022 intake. If you intend, it's not like ISAT, it is only valid for the year you're applying. It is not valid for 2 years, it is not valid for 3 years, it is only valid for the year you're applying. So keep that in mind, okay? The test fees for Australia, for UCAT ANZ is, if you are taking the test in Australia, is Australian $305. If you're taking outside overseas, is Australian $380. The scores come out immediately. So the day you take the test is the day you get the scores, and that's the score you'll be applying with for your University of Adelaide. Okay. Now coming to the different sections that are involved in UCAT. There are 5 different sections that you'll have to work on. Each section, so there are 3 columns I mentioned over here, 4 columns. One gives you the 5 sections. So verbal reasoning, decision making, quantitative reasoning, abstract reasoning, situation judgment. All 5 of them are, again, zero science related, is all aptitudes and skills. Okay, so again, something which is not taught in school, so definitely go ahead and study for it. The main part of UCAT ANZ, the major problematic area generally is the time. So if you look at the number of questions and time given allocated for that particular section, you will find that most of them give you less than a minute to solve a question, right? So if you look at the first thing, verbal reasoning, 22 questions, 44 questions, 22 minutes, 30 seconds per question. Similarly, abstract reasoning is one of the worst ones, 55 questions, 14 minutes, less than 30 seconds per question. So this just proves that UCAT ANZ you cannot take your own sweet time to do the questions. And there is no, and the time does not get carried forward. So if you're very good in verbal reasoning, you finish it in less than 22 minutes, it won't be carried forward to decision making. These are the time for that particular section. So you would take that much time to solve the questions. The entire test is out of 3,600. So the first 4 sections are out of 900 each. So the score that you will get is out of 3,600. Minimum is 300. So if you don't answer anything, you'll get 300. So score range is between 1,200 to 3,600. Situational judgment is scored separately, so they give you the same score out of 900. A typical good score, what University of Adelaide would look at, right? Since there's not a lot of background given on what University of Adelaide is looking at, general suggestion is try to get at least a 2,800 and above. That's the 90th percentile score that generally comes out for UCAT. So try and keep your score as high as possible for University of Adelaide. Now, moving on to the different sections, I will just run through this since we don't have too much time. I'll just give you a brief on that. There are 5 different sections. The first section is verbal reasoning. Verbal reasoning is, again, by the name of it, you can see that it tests you on your reading ability, your critical, how fast you read, how fast you understand. So that's what is testing. It's short passages that you'll have to encounter and solve these kind of questions. Typical answer choice is true, false, can't tell. So if you can either tell the statement is true or false, or you can't even tell. Okay. So I won't run through the entire questions. These are basically this is a typical verbal reasoning kind of question that you might have to face. A short text and a question based on that, and then solve it based on that. This is a second kind of question that you would have to look into. Similarly, short text given. This is a simpler question than the previous one, so it's easier to understand if you're doing a typical verbal reasoning question. Decision making, it is basically a logical based question. And obviously, as the topic suggests, you'll have to come to a decision with that logic, right? 29 questions are tested. And then the question is different than verbal reasoning. You can get text, you can get charts, you can get tables, you can get graphs and diagrams to solve a typical decision-making question. A typical example is this. So one text, and based on that, you need to, the question says strongest argument. So you basically have to find which answer choice is giving you the strongest argument for the text given above. Okay, that's the typical decision-making question. Quantitative reasoning. Now, this is where I generally suggest students again. There are no calculators that you can take. You cannot use your graphic calculators or your scientific calculators. You will be given an online screen calculator, but if you ask me, you don't have too much time to spend doing calculations. That's why mental math skills, again, same as ISAT, mental math skill is definitely one of the bigger things that you need to understand. You need to know when you're solving, you're taking either ISAT or UCAT, ANZ, right? Topic tested, very basic topics, algebra, equations, percentage ratios, geometry, sequences. Nothing that you don't know before, but the way they ask your questions is slightly different. So that is what you need to prepare for. Now, students generally, when they look at quant, they're like, oh, I know my math, I know this, I can do very well. Okay, and the typical problem with those kind of students are they are looking at the right answer. They want the right answer by hook or crook. Just to give you an idea, this UCAT test does not give you the leverage of sitting down for like 10-15 minutes to solve one question. That's why the more questions you solve, the more practice you do, the better you get in UCAT ANZ. That's the only way to get well at UCAT. Get well at UCAT. Okay, let's look at a typical question that might come out. So this is a graph given. There's a text given for that graph, and the question based on that graph. Okay, so this is the way you might see a question: graph, text, and question. And there'll be multiple questions based on that graph and text. Right. So you basically have to understand the question quickly, understand the graph quickly, try to solve the question straight away. Now, there are tricks in these. So for example, in this question itself, the answer choice that is given, none of the above is an answer choice, which basically means it will not be nearing the other answer choices. If your answer is like say 1 million, the answer is none of the above. If your answer is like 200 million, the answer is none of the above, right? This question typically gives you a different answer completely. The answer is negative. As soon as you understand the answer is negative, you don't have to solve it. Just write the answer as none of the above. Abstract reasoning. This is one of the topics or sections where I see students struggling at the beginning because again, nothing of this sort has been taught to you ever before in school. These are basically graphs, figures given you, patterns given to you that you need to basically look at and find an alternate, right? Time is also of a concern in this. 55 questions to be done in 14 minutes. So please bear in mind when you look at like an abstract reasoning question, you just have to click. The only way to get to be clicking is by practice. Okay, I'll show you a typical example. So this is a typical example of an abstract reasoning set. So they've given you two different sets, set A, set B, and there are 6 columns in each set. So, and there's a test shape. So the basic, looking at this question, you'll have to basically figure out what the question is asking. So basically asking this test shape this test shape. Where does this test shape fit in? Does it fit into set A or does it fit into set B? And how do you figure that out? Looking at set A and set B now. Set A, basically when you look at it, what can you see? So you can basically see that set A, when you put a mirror horizontally right here, right? It's a mirror image horizontally, right? In set B, if you put a mirror vertically, right? It's a mirror image, right? So basically set A horizontal, set B vertical. Test shape, does any of the test shape have a vertical mirror image or a horizontal mirror image? That's the thing that you need to figure out. If you draw a line here horizontally, it does not have a mirror image. If you put a line vertically, it does not have a mirror image. So basically, the answer is neither. So this is how a typical abstract reasoning question would look like. So this is one type of question. There are 4 other types of questions as well that you'll have to work on. Moving on, situational judgment. Now, situational judgment is the last section of UCAT ANZ. Now, this is it's basically ethics-based question. So it will ask you real-world situations, and then it will want to see how you behave in that, and what's the appropriate behavior when you're dealing with a real-world situation, right? Similarly, 69 questions, 27 minutes, less than a minute per question. Answer choices, like basically you'll have to rate the appropriateness of a series of options in response to the scenario, or you have to rate the importance of the series of options in response to the scenario, right? So it is an ethics-based question. You definitely cannot neglect this section because this is how universities would see you as, okay, are you ethical enough or not? Okay, now I'm done with UCAT ANZ. I said the different type of questions that you'll be facing. Now, where do we come in place? We help students prepare for both the tests, the UCAT ANZ and the ISAT. So if you are looking out for help before even starting, we generally recommend students to do a diagnostic test. This helps students to understand and have a look at what UCAT and what UCAT ANZ is all about, what ISAT questions, what type of ISAT questions come out, and gives you an idea of your strengths and weaknesses. So that is the diagnostic test. I would recommend, if you are looking out for help, or if you need to understand what both tests is all about, first take a diagnostic, then start working on your preparation. We generally have 3 different structures that we have for both UCAT ANZ and ISAT. A typical structure is the group classes. We run group classes for all 4 cycles. So whenever you plan to take the ISAT, you're more than welcome to reach out, and then I can give you an idea of what kind of group classes, when are we running, and everything. This is how a typical group class looks like for ISAT. So there are 6 sessions in total of 3 hours each, 18 hours of classes, and then tutorial sessions, 2 sessions, one for critical, one for quant, for 2 hours each. This is the typical group structure. At the moment, we are running all Zoom classes. There are no in-person sessions at the moment. This is this January 2021 test date sessions. If you are planning to take the test, we're already halfway through. Today is the third class for the session. The ISAT is happening today. The remaining critical reasoning, if you are looking out for critical reasoning help, you can look out for that. And then UCAT, similar to ISAT, There are 5 sections. We've divided them into 8 concept classes. You have an optional diagnostic test to do. I would suggest start off with the diagnostic, then look into what kind of course you would like to go for. As I've been saying in the middle, that we generally students need to know certain skills. To improve, to enhance those skills, we have started a new course for students, which is the pre-med program, which can enhance you on your mental math skills, reading skills, data analysis, argumentative analysis. We are starting a new batch from Jan 24th, so you can reach out to us and then we can get you on board with that as well. This is our typical structure for everything for ISAT and UCAT. We run group classes, individual classes, hybrid classes. Materials are provided. There is very less material available for ISAT, but we have created our own materials. Our trainers have come up with questions, have come up with practice tests for students to do, which there's a lot less in the market at the moment. So you can take advantage of that when you join the course. UCAT, there are stuff available outside. So when you join us, you get the materials. I would say don't go buy anything. Everything will be provided. So that's it for me. If you want any more information in terms of diagnostic test, anybody wants to do a diagnostic test, if you're looking out for preparations, please reach out to me, or you can reach out to IDP and then they can let me know that you're looking out for preparation help, and then we can help you accordingly. So I'm just going to keep this for a bit so that everybody has an idea of where to reach out to. Yeah, that's it from me.
Thanks so much, Ankesh. That was an amazing session. So detailed. If you'd like to connect with Ankesh and his team of professional trainers at PrepZone, please take his details down or simply ask your counselor at IDP. Ankesh, due to the time constraints and because we want to start the student panel immediately, I might ask you to help us with the Q&A sections. I know some of you have posted amazing questions in our Q&A. Thank you for that. You can continue posting those that are ISAT or UCAT related or relating to the other admissions test. Feel free to put that down and Ankesh will answer them in the chat itself rather than to do it live right now. Yeah, thank you so much, Ankesh. Let me just share my screen. Hang on a second. Okay. I'll just give you a couple minutes to do that. Screenshot something up. There we go. All right, now, so we've come to a very exciting part of our program, which is our student panel discussion and our audience Q&A section. So we've assembled a panel of students who will be sharing their experience through answering some frequently asked questions that we always get as a counselor, and then we'll be taking questions from the audience directly after that. Now, just want to say that today we've really assembled quite a fantastic mix of student leaders on our panel, with 2 of them recently completing undergraduate studies, and 1 of them currently completing graduate medical studies, and 3 current students who are seniors. They all hail from a variety of different academic backgrounds in Singapore and universities in Australia, and I'm sure you've all read their fantastic bios online, and I'll just get them all to introduce themselves, yeah? Hello guys, do we have everybody here? Can feel free to unmute yourselves and to say hi. Welcome again to our panel. Thank you all for making time in your schedule to come by. I know some of you are logging in from Australia, and I know some of you rush clinicals and work to be here. Could I just get you all to introduce yourselves, like your school, your background, what stage you're at on your journey to become doctors and dentists? Maybe Jerica, you'd like to kick us off. You can Just say your name, your background, what year you're in, give us a fun fact about yourself.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Jerica. I'm a third year dental student at the University of Adelaide. I'm currently still in Australia right now, given the situation that we're in. So yeah, I'm stuck here over summer, which I'm missing home a little bit, but it's all good. I was the dentistry rep for my Singapore association last year. So basically what me and my association do is we just get incoming students, and then we just guide them along the way of introducing them to like what dental medical school is like, all like their various programs, and just helping them adapt to life in Adelaide. Yeah.
Cool. You want to go next? Who's next on the list? Sarah.
Hi everyone, what's up? Sarah. I recently graduated from the University of Tasmania. I'll be starting my houseman in Singapore in February, so that's just a little bit to go. So I'm the current president of SMC-ANZ. I'll be handing over to Clement soon. And SMC-ANZ essentially is a representative body of all Singaporean students studying medicine in Australia and New Zealand. So very excited for any one of you guys who will be joining us soon. Yeah, that's
Right, who would like to go next? Celine?
Yes. Hi everyone, my name's Celine. I recently graduated from Uni of Melbourne as well. And I've just started my first week as a junior doctor in country Victoria, which is sort of like Melbourne, but more in the country. Yeah, so I did my undergrad in biomedicine at Uni of Melbourne, and then I went into postgrad at Melbourne as well.
Amazing. Clement, hi, nice to see you.
Hi, my name is Clement. So I'm currently in the University of Tasmania. I'm going to the 4th year. I came directly from JC, NYJC in 2014, and I took a gap year and as Sarah would have mentioned, I'm the incoming president for SMS-ANZ, and she would have done a little intro about SMS-ANZ, so I wouldn't go into that. Yeah, so feel free to, if you have any questions for me. I mean, it's slightly irrelevant because I'm from Tasmania and it's out of the list now, but I'm pretty sure I can still share some experience with you guys, especially for ISET and everything. Yeah.
No, excellent. No, and definitely don't worry about that. We will love to have you to share that. Who's next? Kit?
Hi, yeah, so I'm Wakid, currently going to 4th year at Monash. Yeah, so
Maybe your academic background.
So I was from Raffles previously, and then just going to Monash after serving the NS. Yeah.
Okay, so summarily, Sarah, Marcus unfortunately couldn't join us today, but Sarah, Marcus, and Celine have graduated already. Yeah, commencing housemanship. Celine is a junior doctor, and our current students are Jerica, Waikit, and Clement. Yeah, we've got Celine and Jerica who are in Australia right now. Yeah, fantastic, and we've got such a good spread of students from different states as well. So we've got Adelaide represented, we've got Tasmania, we've got 2 from Melbourne today, and then we've got 2 from Tasmania, 2 from Melbourne, and 1 from New South Wales. So it's fantastic. So thanks for the introduction, guys. Maybe we'll hop right to it. Could you share a little bit about what's it like studying medicine and dentistry? Like, for example, what does a typical week in the life of a medicine or dentistry student look like? And share on your course load, the length of your days, your clinicals, your clinical years, how much of it's clinicals, and your I know we've already mentioned SMS-ANZ, but we can talk about your involvement in other association and clubs and how much involvement that is. Yeah, so let's kick it off. Sarah, would you like to share how your week is like?
Sure, I can go first. So, sort of in preclinical years, usually it's lectures, sort of 9 to 5 throughout the entire week, and then you get some practical, so things like going to the anatomy lab or like the pathology lab, and then that's pretty much the first 3 years. at the University of Tasmania. And starting in third year, you get a bit of clinical exposure as well. So clinical time increases as the years go by. So starting third year, it's maybe around 2 to 3 times a week. And then from fourth and fifth year onwards, it's pretty much every day. And essentially, you are just sort of going to work, just that you don't really get paid. So yeah, it's pretty much your class is in the hospital. You follow the junior doctors around, or you follow the team around, and you learn from there. And then for myself, we still get sort of lectures weekly, and then we've got like blocks of teaching week as well. Yeah, but I guess that differs from university to university, sometimes between clinical schools as well. So I'm sure everyone has different experiences.
Yeah, so Tasmania does the 5-year program. YKit, you've done the 5-year program, or you are commencing your 5-year program as well. The 5th-year program, 5-year. You're in the 5-year program at Monash as well. Maybe you would like to share on that, the clinical component.
Yeah, so I guess it's pretty similar to local universities as well, like in NUS. So it's kind of first 2 year pre-clinicals, and then the next 3 years kind of doing placements at the local hospitals. I guess in terms of like in the times of COVID, I guess right now I think for Monash at least, most of the preclinical work, such as in year 1 and year 2, has been moved online mostly, but this will obviously evolve with how COVID changes with the year. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll definitely have to have a chat with all of you, Corinne, a bit. But back to the bit about the clinical splits, because we were talking earlier about how Monash adopted a problem-based learning kind of scenario, right? Are you enjoying that?
Yeah.
So what does that actually entail? We just want to make sure that from your perspective, what it's like putting together all your different branches of sciences with the application component, right?
Yeah. So I guess they kind of do more of this problem-based or team-based learning kind of thing in preclinical years. So you just kind of put together, as you said, so just everything surrounding, let's say, something about the cardiovascular system or the heart, and then you just kind of go through kind of scenarios where they take kind of real life patients, and we are expected to discuss and answer certain questions. And I think this kind of learning is pretty good for self-directed learning, which I think for doctors in future that we will have to do a lot of it. So it's pretty good training and practice.
Oh, okay. And then do you have a research component as well?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, I see. All right, so going on to the rest, I think Clement, you were from you were from Tasmania, so similar mode of study with Sarah. Celine, maybe you can comment, because you're, as of a 5-year program, you're in the 4-year Doctor of Medicine program at Uni Melbourne. So maybe you could talk about the structure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess there's quite a few schools that actually do postgrad medicine, but all of them sort of like vary in terms of like how much time is spent on clinicals, how much time is spent on like lectures and like more theory stuff. So for Melbourne Uni, is the culture is like 1 year of lectures and all the theory things, because they assume that you have all the knowledge that you have, even if you don't. And then 2nd to 4th year, you're sort of like thrown into like hospitals, and most of the time it would be the same hospital for the 3 years, and it's fully like 8 to 5 sort of like clinical placements. And then maybe like once in a while you'll have lectures that go on in the hospital, because there's like clinical schools within the hospitals itself. So it's sort of quite different from, you know, the other schools that actually do postgrad medicine as well. And also we also have something called the problem-based learning in our year 1 as well, and also I think anatomy classes, dissections as well.
So working, sorry to interrupt you, keep going.
Yeah, so it's pretty packed, and you know, like some people might find it a bit more stressful, because you know you have to clear all the theory stuff in 1 year. But then generally, if you sort of like make it through the first year, then you'll be, you know, pretty okay.
So basically going from blocks with the undergraduate students and then pure clinical years, you guys also follow similar, right? You have pure clinical years at the end.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
And then there's also like the research component as well. So because the nature of the Doctor of Medicine degree, we have to do research as part of the degree. So that's when we do research like the second half of the year and the first half of fourth year. So sometimes it's like a mix of placements and research, whereas the starting of fourth year is mostly research, and you spend half a year just doing your research. And then, I mean, like if you are able to, then you publish your research. So yeah, the structure is pretty good actually. I think, like you know exactly when you're going to do stuff. But then last year, because of COVID, there has been sort of some changes in terms of people had to stop their physical research, or everything was transitioned online. So I can't really say for like the future years what's going to happen.
I got it. All right. Thank you, Celine. And before we go into COVID, let's hear from our dentistry student, Jerica. Hi. Hello. Maybe you'd like to, because you guys know, we chatted just now, we said that, dentistry is 5 years. The structure, what's your typical week like for a dentistry student? You got the same structure for clinicals?
So for Adelaide Dentistry, we start our practicals pretty much from the beginning of first year. So first year, you usually like just practice on each other. So we go through like the very basic stuff. So the good thing about Adelaide that I'm very grateful for, you really just hit the ground running starting from day one. So you really get the hands-on experience of, what's it like in like a dental setting kind of thing. So throughout the entire 5 years, you'll have practical. So the first 2 years, you just practice on each other, family and friends kind of thing. And then third year onwards is when you get placed into your different, different placements. So it can be like hospitals in the city or like slightly more regional. And as mentioned by the other unis as well, we adopted this case-based learning as well. We call it integrated learning activity. So basically it's like they'll give us a case, and then all the research questions that we get from this case it will be like an umbrella of all the lectures and content that has been covered throughout the year kind of thing. So like the dental school really takes part in this integrated learning activity to like as like like I said, like an umbrella to like all cover all the different content that they think is necessary to get through the years of dental school. Yeah.
Super. So you get maximum exposure and hands-on learning. So you start working with each other, but then at some point, does your university have a clinic that you can practice on real students, real clients? And
so the University of Adelaide recently, I think 2 years ago, they opened up a new health and medical science building, and on the Adelaide Dental Hospital is in the building as well. So in third year, it's when you start seeing patients on the waiting list, on the public healthcare waiting list. So you see them in the dental hospital. Fourth and fifth year is when you go to, like I said, it's still the public system. You still get to see patients, but it may not be in the city, that kind of thing. So it's just different exposure in different environments. But yeah,
you get sent out to different hospitals. Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that the same for you guys, the medicine students? You guys get pro bono. So that's not probably the right word. You probably get to work on live patients during your clinical years. I mean, there's a student hospital, right? There's such things, and then you get to go into proper hospitals and your maybe final year, when your final clinical year. No, still a student hospital, right? Yeah, okay. Or assisted. Anyone?
I guess pretty much sort of, at least how it works for Tasmania, at least in my uni, is that we have like a clinical school that we attend, and then it ties up with the hospital there. So you go there, and then like you go to the hospital, and then you kind of help the doctors with their work, but you're definitely supervised at all times. So if that answers the question.
Good. Yes. Fantastic. All right. So what do you think has been your main challenges as a medicine or dentistry student? Would you want to answer that one, Sarah?
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, you can talk about your most meaningful moments as well, you know, on the flip side.
I suppose I guess sort of the most challenging would be when you're first in your first year, or at least in my first year when I first moved over, and I guess adjusting to life overseas without family and friends, and having to do everything by yourself. I think that's quite different. So that's a major shift. But definitely things get better after a while.
But
I guess, yeah, sorry, keep going.
Oh yeah, but with regards to the study of medicine and dentistry, like, is there any like main challenges that you faced with that, or did you think it was you've been quite well supported and it's quite smooth sailing and
Maybe not
heavy?
smooth, but I suppose it's okay. Pretty much sort of normal study in the sense that if exams are coming, you kind of just buckle down and study. I don't know if anyone else has anything to offer.
If you're too intelligent, it's not a problem. Yeah, okay, so Jerica, let's hear from you, like any like challenges that you think dentistry has given you as posed for you. Like, did you struggle personally?
I think just adding on to what Sarah said, like, yep, you're going overseas for the first, maybe not for the first time, but like just a new environment and just getting used to it. I think for dentistry specifically, I would say is because it trains, you need to have your pretty good manual dexterity because you're really just using your hands. So,
dexterity.
Yeah, so there are like some people that just, you know, have it straight away, and then there are other people as well that, like, you know, it takes a while for them to get the hang of it, kind of thing. So it's really, I think it's just getting used to the fact that, you know, just being familiar with everything that's happening. And yeah,
just why does this going to a good school with the equipment does help, I suppose. Clement and Celine,
perhaps I could give a little bit of my 2 cents. I guess a lot of people are in the same situation as me. I am a physics student all the way, and taking medicine has been quite a challenge. I know that sometimes you hear like people say that it's quite difficult for physics students to really grasp the learning environment that medicine provides you. But I think that in my experience, what physics, being a physics student really gave me the opportunity to understand how to solve problems rather than memorize the solutions to them. I've done bio before, but I think medicine specifically is something that has a lot of memory work, and you learn to integrate memory with problem solving in medicine a lot of the times. And I would like to specifically also encourage the use of this app that I stand by very firmly, called Anki. So it has helped me a lot in my preclinical years. If you have any further questions about Anki, I can answer that as well. I think an important thing going into medicine or dentistry, in fact, I think, is not to be afraid of rote memorizing sometimes, because it's necessary. A lot of things that doctors right now are doing, as in how they diagnose you and how they treat you, sometimes there can be no explanation. Sometimes you look for an explanation, but the environment just doesn't give you one. So it's important not to be too demoralized by the fact that there's no answer for some things. Yeah.
I'm so happy you touched on that, because we earlier on received a question in our Q&A during Farid's segment about whether or not it gives the student a certain advantage to doing bio over physics, or one over the other. So if anybody would like to answer that as well, please go ahead and either like put that in the chat or answer out live in this session. I'm so glad you mentioned that app as well. Please feel free to put links and spell that Anki application out for us as well. That'd be great. Amazing.
So it's ANKI.
AN what? Sorry?
ANKI is literally
ANKI. Anki. Okay. Good. Because I was thinking one of the main challenges would be for medicine students would be like, you're going from your books, in JC or IB, and then you're going straight into the environment where you have to also have a certain set of communication skills in addition to your manual dexterity, Jerica. But for I think a lot of your schools do prepare you for that aspect as well, right? Like meeting patients and bedside manner and communication skills and whatnot. Celine, would you like to share about your challenges as well for being a grad medical student? Did you have, I mean, I'm sure you did biomedicine at UML, right? It's prepared you quite well.
Yeah. So actually, I wanted to add on to what Clement has said. Like, I was also like a physics student all the way from secondary school until JC. And I didn't actually feel like I was being disadvantaged or anything like that in any case. I think more of the other way around. Like, I feel like having combined knowledge of like physics and bio when you actually start to do it, it actually gives you sort of like an advantage of understanding how things like imaging, like CT scans, X-rays work. So then, sometimes that's what I will tell people who are worried about, not having done bio or anything like that. And in terms of challenges myself, I think, a lot of people will sort of ask you like, oh, why didn't you do undergrad medicine? And I guess the straightforward answer would be I didn't get in. But then, sometimes that's not like the worst thing ever that can happen, because I feel like throughout the whole undergrad, I was constantly, reevaluating why I want to do this, career, and then sort of makes you more clear of your choices, and also creates a good foundation in terms of your knowledge when you actually go into the medicine side of things itself. So I think, and then within medical school, I guess, the main challenges would be like what Cheryl, you said, like translating theory into practical medicine. So obviously, like in your first few years of clinicals, you feel like really awkward, you don't know how to, really touch, examine patients, you feel really awkward. And then you always have a buddy by your side.
Yeah.
But then after a while, you sort of get more used to it, and then you gain confidence. So it's not sort of like a bad thing to start off, more awkward than other people. So, but as long as at the end, you improve and then you gain more confidence, then, all good.
Yes, examining body parts. That's a bit of an awkward one. Yes, thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate you talking about how the additional time is giving you some emotional and mental preparation as well. That's a good one. So I understand our dentistry rep Jerica has to leave. Jerica, before you go off, perhaps you like to offer any last words or advice to our dentistry students in the chat about getting through the program, or about transiting or acing the course?
I would like to say, if you're interested in doing dentistry, just go for it. There's really nothing to be afraid of. We have a very good support system in Australia. We also have the Singapore Association, as mentioned previously. So it is a daunting experience going overseas to study, especially studying such a demanding course. But know that you have support everywhere here and back home in Singapore. IDP really helped me a lot in terms of just helping me prepare. So just if you are interested and if you think dentistry is your thing, just apply, and hope to see you guys soon.
Thank you so much, Erica. But thanks for stopping by, and making the time to come by. I know it's so busy for work life now. Yes, go ahead. We'll see you. We'll catch you next time. Thank you.
Thank you. See you guys.
Say bye, Jerica. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit broader, since she's mentioned that about study experience overseas in general. I think you guys have talked a little bit about getting through the program. Maybe you could share a little bit more about your experience, like as a new international student in Australia. And Jerica's talked a little bit about how IDP has helped her. I know a few of you might have gone through like IDP as well, right? Sarah, did you go through like a IDP pre-departure seminar too? Like we usually,
yes,
I
think I did. Yeah.
Cool. So we usually do prepare like quite extensive pre-departure session here at IDP for our students. And then at this session, we do tell you sort of the documents you have to prepare and how to mentally prepare yourself. And then we also invite students like Sarah's associations like the SMC-ANZ to come aboard, or the various associations from your various universities to come aboard. So you actually touch base with some of your seniors before you actually go and leave for Australia, and you can take their details down, start WhatsApp groups, things like that, find last minute accommodation, and they're really like friends, you know, your mentors. So that helps a bit with preparation. What else do you do, guys, to sort of prepare you for like how did you prepare yourself adequately for that transition to either university life or studying medicine in particular? Did you buy like medical textbooks beforehand, that sort of thing, or did you do anything to sort of emotionally prepare yourself for that transition? I think we have some younger students here in our in attendance, and maybe you'd like to offer a bit of tips. Like Clement, you got anything you want to say besides? I know you talked about the app.
So what I did was I didn't really mentally prepare myself, because I've been mentally preparing myself for the last 20 years. But like in terms of physical preparation, what I did was I downloaded a bunch of textbooks that were recommended by international students all over the world. But I found that a lot of them were not very useful when I was going through the degree, because in my honest opinion, I feel that if you can grasp the lecture notes adequately, you'll be a very good student. Most people can't really grasp everything in the lecture notes already. So if you're better than that and you can get extra help from the resources, that will be great. It'll be superb, right? I have some resources that I can recommend as well. If I can put it in the chat later on. But yeah, I just prepared like 20 or 30 PDF textbooks on my iPad. Yeah.
Cool. Celine, you got anything you did to help you with the transition?
I think in terms of like medical knowledge or like science sort of things, everyone is sort of like starting from the same point. So then, there's it's similar to like local studying medical school. So I felt like the more important thing to do was to like fit into the culture here. So like, first of all, I think a lot of people in Australia, they feel like Singaporeans speak very fast. So I think the most important thing would be to slow down and like pronunciate everything that you say, instead of like, doing all the Singlish and stuff. So then people will be able to understand you better. And, like even then, I think, there's no shame in like speaking Singlish, at school, because a lot of people are also fascinated by our, our accent. And it's fun to make friends, like, when you teach them the accent as well. So yeah, I guess that's sort of what I was doing before starting uni. I did sort of like read up on some biology stuff, because as I said, I was a physics student for like my whole life. So it might be good to have a look, but don't be too concerned about falling behind, because everyone sort of starts at the same point.
Super, thank you so much, Celine. Now just going back to I understand that Clement and Sarah, you both applied through IDP. How was your experience of IDP? I mean, like, do you think that has made a bit of a difference in addition to just preparing you for, getting there and all that practical stuff? Do you think it's made a difference in your student journey there? And you're maybe with applying, like, did you also feel free to talk about any challenges that you had while applying or getting admissions? Sarah, do you want to go first? Yeah.
Oh, okay, sure. I was going to ask if Clement wanted to go first, but yeah, sure, I can go first. Sure. I think I had a good experience with IDP. I'm not sure if Kyler Chua is still working with you guys, but he was my counselor. He was very helpful throughout the entire process. I guess the only challenge was sort of I didn't do too well with my ISETs. That's not Kyler's fault. So that was the main challenge. Sort of getting onto a program was quite difficult. But again, Kyler's very helpful. And I guess throughout the entire sort of, even after I started medical school, I think there was a sort of a problem where I had to change my passport because it expired and things like that. So I asked Kyler for advice, and I was already like second, third year, and he still helped. So that was good. And I suppose sort of when you're kind of applying to sort of university or medical school specifically, without the help of agents, I'm not sure how other people did it, but I think what was good was that I didn't really have to think too much about the administrative side of things. It's just, the counselor asks for this, you provide it, and then that's pretty much it. Everything else gets settled. So yeah, I think so much. Yeah, that was good.
Yes, Kyler is still here. He's still one of our senior counselors actually, and leads our team along with Farid. So yes, like you could always approach them. Yes, we're quite different from other agencies in that we do represent all the university. So our education advice is completely objective, and we do, because we're officially, we are founded by them, so we do get that direct admissions advice and from universities as well. We can call you up directly. In previous years, we used to actually, schedule those medical interviews. So that's something. Clement, do you want to add on to anything that Sarah said with regards to your applications and the admissions part? Like, have you been helped?
Yeah, so my counselor was I think it was Sarah with double R.
Yeah.
Yep. So is she still working for? I'm not sure, but yeah. I remember that IDP was very helpful with my applications. I didn't my applications were really smooth. So I think what IDP did was I think I applied multiple times because I had NS, right? I applied 3 different times. So all throughout the times, they were very helpful with me. And I had to disappoint them 2 times because I always wanted a 3rd try at the local universities. So once I got the offers, I usually rejected them. I was just trying out to see, where I could get accepted at and things like that. I was just trying out for the first 2 years. For the 3rd year, I actually tried to get an admission. So by the 3rd year, I was well acquainted with the whole process. So it really helped me a lot as well. And along the way, there were changes like price changes and nitty-gritty stuff that IDP really helped me with along the way. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Clement. Is there a reason why you guys chose to study in Australia overseas rather than at a local one or at another destination? Anything you guys want to mention? That's because we've got one of the questions in that chat, and I think that leads on really nicely from what you've just said, Clement.
So probably I can go first. I think I made my decision with Australia's because I think the few popular options include UK and Ireland as well. I actually applied to everything, but my onus for choosing Australia is because, first of all, I recognize that like this is some of the tips that I read from online, and I feel it's pretty good that you should choose a place that you might consider practicing in to study medicine, because sometimes they give priority to people who graduate from local universities, right? And I also understand, and I also recognize that the NHS is not a place that I would like to practice in because of first of all the working hours actually equal Singapore. It's not far apart, but they are severely underpaid and things like that. I just wouldn't want to work in such an environment. And also I feel like Australia is much closer to home as well. Cultural wise, I'm not sure. I think both places have their merits. I mean, I would think that if you could get into Oxbridge, go ahead, right? But other than that, I wouldn't prefer to study in the UK. And also, one thing that brings me to Australia is that first of all, the 5-year courses. There aren't many 5-year courses in UK as well. And Australia is more flexible with their requirements, as in, I mean, I met all of them, but a lot of the good UK schools, they require biology. As I mentioned before, I'm not a bio student. I was very disadvantaged when I was applying to Imperial College London, for example, and certain other medical schools. They rejected me on the basis that I didn't take biology. And so I felt that was not very fair. And it was something that wasn't raised to me before I started applications as well. So there is one thing that the current J1s might want to take note of, like maybe if you're taking physics, you might want to change to bio. But as Celine mentioned, there really is not much of an disadvantage because you really catch up pretty fast. Other than that, as for Ireland, my only issue with Ireland is that the cost is a bit higher, that's all. Other than that, Australia, I only choose Tasmania because first of all, it's a 5-year course. And it costs, like, honestly, that's my only onus.
Yeah, budget friendly. Yes, a lot of our students do pick Australia. Also, like you said, you raised a very good point. You do need to think about sort of the working environment and the country's prevailing systems, for taking on international students into the workforce, right? For those of you who are uninitiated to the terminology, NHS, so National Health System in the UK, and yes, there are fewer places or there's like a lot less priority for international students to enter the workforce over there, right? I think that's just something that works against you. Australia also has a post-study work visa. So even if you're not a medical or dentistry student, if you've done a program with a certain number of years, you can apply for that additional post-study work visa to work in Australia. Yeah, so that's a nice thing. And also, I think a lot of our students do say they prefer what they like about Australia is that not only is it, because you see, you're talking about a long duration of study, maybe 5 to 6 years, and you're talking about quite long working life, perhaps, right? You kind of want to be quite near family. So the proximity does help, and the cultural proximity does help as well. Did you think that was applicable for yourself, Celine? Like, do you have families here in Singapore? I know you're residing there now, but what other factors led you to pick Australia over other destinations?
I guess it was more like a family decision as well. And then we sort of felt like Melbourne was quite a migrant friendly place, and like the food is pretty good as well. There's a lot of choices, and yeah, so that's one of the the food here is actually pretty good. So that was one of the reasons why we chose Melbourne. And yeah, I actually didn't give much thought to like UK or Ireland, only because of like family reasons.
I see. Okay, so yes, Melbourne has been ranked world's most favorable livable city, right? 7 years in a row. Yes. So I studied in Melbourne as well, so I completely feel you, girl. good choice there. Yes. All right, Sarah, do you want to add on anything about your choice, like how it's helped? I think like Clement, you went to Tasmania, and it was quite good, cost efficient and quite close to home as well.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much
wraps it up.
Yeah.
So let's flip that question a little bit, yes? So in addition to sort of, why Australia, many students actually ask our counselors if they should do medicine or dentistry because they can't decide. What advice do you have for them? Like, okay, like Clement, why did you decide on medicine as opposed to dentistry?
I can't really answer that because I've never really considered dentistry and its merits. I was very blindsided by, very biased to medicine. But I can tell you why I chose medicine because, well, I think that I've always loved the human body as it's a very natural answer for everyone, I think. And as for dentistry, I think the dexterity and everything, I don't think I have the same form of dexterity. So that's just from me. Yeah.
You didn't consider being a surgeon, just.
I have.
But the dexterity.
I probably haven't built it up yet, but I've never been
passion, right? Right. Celine, any thoughts on why you picked medicine over dentistry? You could have done a conversion to dentistry, right?
I could, yeah. So it's sort of like similar to what Clement has said. I think I didn't really consider dentistry, and also because I feel like, not sure if I'm correct, but I think the fees for dentistry are slightly higher than medicine at Melbourne Uni. So that was one of the reasons as well. And I don't actually see myself being a dentist in the future, also because of the dexterity thing, rather than a doctor. So yeah, so that's one of the reasons why, I guess, the main reason why.
Nothing to do with job prospects or whatever. You guys are just so motivated from young. But you raised a good point, Clement, about the human body. I think it could be possibly, I think what you meant was that, human body is quite, we've got quite a large subject area to work on rather than a very localized area for dentistry, right? Is that more interesting for you, I think? Probably.
Yes, I can't imagine myself working on teeth all my life. Yeah. And I personally don't go to the dentist very often. Every time I go to the dentist, it's like I'm just sent back straight. Like, oh, you're fine. It's okay. I've never had.
Okay, you never had that hands-on, right? Yeah. It actually is a bit more to that study, but fortunately we don't have Jerica here. But we'll definitely try to invite her back for future initiatives, and then we can always connect students here who have a similar question. If you still have that question, you'd like to direct that to Jerica, just feel free to ask your counselor. We'll get that to her. Sarah, do you have any reasons why you picked medicine over dentistry?
I suppose I actually did consider dentistry, and I did go for sort of like a attachment in both, like with dentists and with doctors. So I think that sort of experience, hands-on experience, gives you a bit more of insight as to which you'd prefer. But I guess given COVID, it's quite difficult. But also I think it's very different fields, and I don't really think I have an answer as to like
Different
why. But it's
field.
just, yeah, it's just something sort of like when you experience, you know, you feel like you resonate with it, and that's pretty much, yeah.
So would your advice be to maybe do a couple of shadow a couple of doctors and dentists, or go into different placements to get some hands-on, just to see what it's all about and see how they work, the working environment is like? Is that?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend it. But like as I said, given COVID, it might be quite difficult. So I think just even like asking questions,
From
like, you know,
seniors, yeah.
yeah, from I guess like from practicing dentists or practicing doctors, like what their workload is like, what do they like about their job. I think that all would be really relevant when you're trying to decide which field or which direction you're headed in. Yeah.
In general, with the job aspect, I mean, when I visit dentists, I see they work in very small teams, unless you are in a, you know, like a large dental center or hospital, right? And you guys seem to work in bigger teams as doctors. So is that something that is that consistent with your current experience as a first-year doctor, Celine? Like, you work in bigger teams, right? Generally, if you pick medicine, you work in larger teams rather than working in solitude with one nurse as a dentist. Yeah. Okay. That's an interesting one. Okay, moving on to the big question that we all have about COVID. So let's talk about the year you've had. I mean, COVID has no doubt changed our lives, not least education this year. So I guess a good starting point would be to ask, you know, how it's affected your lifestyle and your routines outside of school, and specifically, how is it like now in your states? And then, you know, you can talk to us about it from a student life perspective. Yeah. Clement, you want to go?
So when COVID struck, I was starting my, I would say my last preclinical year. But as Sarah mentioned, it was a transitional year. So coming back to Singapore actually made me miss a lot of my rotations, although the rotations are not the full physical ones, but they give you a look into what fourth and fifth year, the later years are like. For me, learning online, I mean, I personally prefer to study in Singapore. I mean, because I like to stay with my family, yeah. But learning online for me has never been a big challenge, because I've always been an independent learner. I think that physical interactions are good, and they are important as well. But I think as the situation is right now, learning online isn't too bad. I think, I don't know about other people, but personally for me, I think that medicine is very independent. Like the onus is on you to really read up in your own time. And I think online learning gives you that opportunity, because you have more time to yourself. Yes, there are time differences, yeah, and we have to wake up like 6 a.m. for exams or for lectures, that kind of thing, which is tiring. But because of the time difference as well, you have a longer break towards the end of the day, and that's where you can catch up. I think as medicine, I don't know about dentistry, but as medical students in general, we have a lot of backlog, and a lot of this backlog is done by self-studying a lot. I think it's the same for most degrees as well. Yeah, so I actually appreciate online learning. Yeah.
Oh, super. What about yourself, Celine?
I guess this year has been quite different for like all the medical schools, you know, especially for pre-clin and also the clinical students who usually go for placements. But then I guess fortunately for Uni of Melbourne, they have been very accommodating, and also I guess like liaising with the hospitals to ensure that, you know, all the final years actually get all the placements that we need in order for us to graduate. So I actually haven't missed out on much this year, but unfortunately, you know, like my juniors, they have been taken off placements here and there because of like first wave, second wave. So that hasn't been, you know, the most helpful for their learning. But then again, you know, like sometimes, like what Clement said, you know, learning by yourself will be quite essential for medical students. You know, learning from YouTube, like all the random videos is gonna be pretty useful. Like when I was in year one, I remember like I did a lot of online learning as well. I didn't really feel the need to go physically to school unless there was, like practical lessons or like problem-based learning sessions, because then it's all like, very didactic teaching. So yeah, so I guess it has its pros and cons for online learning.
Cool. Yourself, Sarah?
I suppose I wasn't quite affected by, my placements weren't quite affected by COVID. So, but at the same time, we did have sort of virtual teaching, and I agree with the other.
Like throughout your program, like
as in just in the final
just the
year,
coded.
sort of like,
Okay.
yeah. So, but I agree with Clement and Celine. Sometimes it's good to have some time to study by yourself, and I think also virtual learning can be quite good. And I think it largely depends on what kind of learner you are, whether you're like a hands-on learner, you prefer time to yourself, or you prefer like going to classes. And I think this all comes with over the years when you start, like, you start your med school or your dentistry school, and I think you sort of figure that out along the way. Yeah.
But you still keep team discussions and classroom discussions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for answering that, guys. Because I was actually going to ask you if, in your opinion, if you thought learning online is as effective as conventional learning. Yeah. So you do lose out on the human aspect, but there's still team discussions. It's still recorded, everything. And I mean, I think what's going to happen next is that there'll be like bubbles, right, where you can do your clinicals. I mean, if you're a current student, Clement and Celine, you know your juniors quite well, perhaps they'll roll out these things in the labs where they do, or in the hospitals where they have like travel bubbles and little research areas, right, where they actually have teams that are, kind of isolated or anything like that, or do they just cancel the whole thing and they're bringing them on team by team? You know what I mean? I think they're doing that in the UK now.
I actually have no idea what.
Yeah, no.
Sorry. Can you explain again?
Right. So basically, like they zone certain areas in the hospitals so that so clinicals can still happen for certain students and things like that. Yeah. So perhaps that will come on board soon. Okay. Now, part of the learning journey is the interactions and the discussions amongst peers, and in between the faculty and students. So you were mentioning, right, like Clement, like how are these interactions, discussions, and communications done in the online learning space? Is that mostly Zoom or platform or?
Yeah, it's still on Zoom. Like it's okay, so it's a bit different. Like in real life, they will usually hire is the right word, yeah. So like they get a patient to act in front of you, which is more real. But in a Zoom setting, that's not going to happen. One of your friends have to be the person, and it's much easier to question a friend rather than a stranger. And because your friend has a medical background as well, it's a bit different because you don't get the entire experience of talking to somebody who has no idea what you're trying to say, no idea of the terms that you are going to make. So I think it definitely has changed a little bit, but the good thing is that it saves a lot of time online. You can have, instead of one session, you can have 2 in 1. That's what happened to us. That's what happened to my curriculum. It got squeezed. Because it's online, it's able to get squeezed. And so
flexibility.
Yeah. And so we were able to save some time, and they were able to afford 1 or 2 extra weeks before exams for us to study. And I thought that was great. I benefited a lot from that. Because as Sarah mentioned, I think it's very important to consider what kind of learner you are. For me, I believe, I mean, I don't know for others, but for me, I believe that I learn better when I explain the concept to myself rather than somebody explaining it to me. So I rather just go to the lecture slide on my own rather than watching a lecture, for example.
Yes, can be quite like boring just doing that. Okay, so like you actually got some it's interesting to know that the schools have actually adapted in that sense, and there's some kind of role playing, but with your peers rather than say with an actor or an actual patient. Yeah. Celine, is that what happens in Melbourne as well, or did you manage to avoid that? Because I know some of you experience physical, virtual, and then you've mostly experienced physical. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say most of my placements, I mean, all of my placements this year were all physical in hospital, and we were able to attend like all 5 days each week. I guess the only good part of this year was because the first half of the year when COVID was more, severe, we actually, because all 4th years actually have like half a year to do research, so we weren't exactly super affected by all the COVID restrictions and stuff like that. So yeah, so I can't really say for other unis.
Great. All right. So, Sarah, did you want to add on to anything Clement said? Because you're in the same.
I think
Clement, pretty much the same, right?
Yeah.
With Celine, yes. Clement, you are a current student. So I know we're running out of time, so maybe we can wrap up the session. Does anybody have any other last words or general advice for students who want to get into medicine and dentistry that have not already said, or that you've personally learned they would like to share? For those who've graduated like Celine and Sarah, like if you have any advice for surviving the program or with application strategy, now's a great time to say anything that you might have thought of. If not, we'll head to the question.
I guess, in the long run, it's better to really think about why you want to do medicine or dentistry. Be very clear of your motivations, and also like, what are your strengths, and then they'll sort of help to decide on which path you're going to go. And also because I say that also because throughout your medical degree or like your undergrad degree, if you're going to do postgrad, you will constantly ask yourself, and at times when you're very tired from like clinicals or stuff like that, you will question yourself. So try to be sure, and then that's going to be the constant motivation for yourself to continue going on.
I see. We do actually have a question. Do you have anything you want to add, Clement, on this? No. Sarah? All right. Yeah. Okay, let's go to the questions. We've got one that just came up. How are reapplicants viewed, especially in graduate entry medicine? Are they at a disadvantage or rather at an advantage if they improve? Oh, sorry, I see it's already been answered. But if anybody wants to answer that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I guess I can actually, because I did actually try twice for the Melbourne Uni course. So the first time when I did the interview, I actually got a place at another uni, but then I decided to stay in Melbourne because of family. And in any case, I feel like you are more at an advantage because you sort of know how the system works. And then for me, like my personal experience was that I was a lot more relaxed the second time around. And that was sort of like, what helped me throughout the second round of applications. And I don't actually think they like pinpoint you like, oh, like you're a reapplicant. They don't do that. And they just see each year when you apply, like how your scores and your interview is done. So I guess don't have to feel too concerned about that aspect of things.
They in terms of the nitty-gritty, they do retain your application. They don't retain your interview scores from before, right? Do they?
I don't think they will, actually you spend that time to go and look for your previous application.
Yeah, I know we do have one school that does. Monash, I think you can't do like your interview twice or something like that. But that's good to know. Thank you so much for answering that graduate admissions question. I'm so happy you're all here. Thank you. Now, with that, we'll probably wrap up this session, guys. Seriously, amazing answers. Attendees, amazing questions. Thank you all for attending this full day workshop / event, and special thanks to all student leaders here for taking time out their busy study and work schedule today to really give back. I think that's what I really love about our Aussie graduates and alumni. They're really fantastic like that. Guys, thank you for taking these questions. It was really great insight what studying overseas is all about, whether or not you take the undergraduate or the graduate pathway or whatever state you go to. And it's wonderful to hear about the students coping so well. Clement, you've done so well with the current situation. I wish you the best for the remainder of your studies, and for our graduates, Sarah, Celine, we're so proud of you for finishing strong, and I hope your housemanship year and your work goes well, yeah? Thank you all. Now on the screen, I'll just put up a slide so we have some details. Give me a second. Okay. All right, so Guys, on the screen, we've left our details to get in contact with us and our friendly counselors. Connect with us through IG to receive updates on more webinars and talks. We'll likely want to run the session one more time later on during your in the year perhaps, but just stay in touch when we've gotten more confirmation of that. Stay in touch with IG and FB to get more updates on more webinars and talks. There's also a link to be connected with our counselors to help you through any questions relating to overseas education. You can also connect with our universities virtually from our IDP Singapore website. Don't forget to download our Study Abroad app, and also to remind you all, some of you, in case you're not aware, IDP Singapore is having a virtual fair the following weekend. So this is when you can bring all your questions to your counselors within the week, and you can actually speak to universities directly at our virtual fair. Get their advice based on your grades or based on any up to date information on the COVID situation at that university, and then you can apply with the team after that. Okay. All right. So thank you again, everybody, and have a wonderful rest of your Saturday. I will see you next time. Thank you, guys. Have a great day. Bye. And I'll just leave this on.